The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Live tonight from the Talladega Super Speedway, LSRTV, happy to be with you to say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of the 2017 PTSD Awareness 250 at Talladega. As always, happy to be with you, myself, Evan Pasoko, going to be joined topside in just a moment by Mr. James Blanket, as always, downstairs, the lovely and talented Cisco Scarbuza, pushing the buttons and bringing us to you here this evening. There is no rain in sight. Unfortunately, we don't have any MMA on the side, but nonetheless, we do have 250 miles of Truck Series action here with you this evening. And as always, couldn't be more happy to bring it to you. Talladega is always a fun one, and we always get our fair share of plate track racing here on LSR TV. And for those who tune in with us regularly, Friday nights is typically the place to be for that. A little bit different here tonight than normal. Trucks on track as we await the Super Speedway Cup Series to return to us. It is Daytona week on the iRacing service and on the real world side of things, but we've got a little bit of Talladega action. And, you know, James, a little bit of differences here and there between Daytona and Talladega, but before you start nitpicking the two apart, it's quite evident that those two tracks completely different to anything else on the oval side of things here on the iRacing service. And I will say every single time we get them, I absolutely love these trucks. They are my favorite of the top three of the NASCAR National Touring Series, and I am excited for this one as we have about 94 laps up for grabs tonight.
They're your favorite. They're the producer's favorite at Fox. That's why they prioritize trucks coverage more than just about anything else, or as much as they can. And they run really fun races here at Talladega. That October race in the day is one that I feel like doesn't get seen all that much, but it ends up being one of the most entertaining races of the year because there's something about the way these trucks poke a hole through the air and the width that you find at Talladega, especially in comparison to Daytona, where most everybody else is this weekend. You put the two together, and it just makes for a really, really racy package, which I think would probably be NASCAR's closest thing to IndyCar's Indianapolis, in the way that you can kind of jump back and forth and be in the lead and suck up to other trucks and make things happen. It makes for a very, very entertaining race to watch.
And for those who may have tuned in a couple of weeks ago when we were at Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the Indy cars for the Drive for Suicide Prevention Indy 250, same group of guys out here doing all these special events, and also want to say hi to them and welcome them back to LSR TV for another one of their special events. The drivers right now working through a qualifying session. It is 15 minutes long, and it is open qualifying, which I always think is a little bit more fun at these plate tracks. Gives us an opportunity as we hang out topside to take a look around and see what some of these guys are up to. A couple of drivers out there in a pack right now, three of them working together on the front straight of the racetrack. Might give you just a little bit of insight as far as, you know, who's going to be working with who during the race. But at the end of the day, Talladega is Talladega. You can be friendly amongst one another for the first 92, 93 laps of this thing. When it comes down to it, it's every man for himself. And the other interesting thing about these special event races is, James, maybe not so much tonight because a lot of these guys do all of these special events together, but as opposed to what we see in league racing, you don't really have teams that are racing for points together in this kind of a thing. So it is almost a little bit more of every man for himself out there.
To some degree, though, we've got some drivers that know each other from our regular Friday night racing here on LSR TV. Your Rodney Wofford, your Mark Jorgensen's, your Brandon Chiburkos and company. So I'd say there are folks that know each other in this, and in some sense, maybe that creates drafting partners if they can get together towards the end of the race. But yeah, I think you're right to a large degree. A lot of these drivers don't really race that much with one another, don't really have that much of a connection to one another, and I think most importantly, don't really know how these other drivers race on track and in a pack, and when they're at the front of the field, and when they lay back. And, you know, I could go through all the other sorts of nuances, but When you don't necessarily know the driving styles of everybody around you, especially at a plate track where there's so little room for error, things can get hairy pretty quick if someone steps out of line incorrectly.
And if you've been in and around the sim racing community for a number of months or years, you'll know that there's a lot of these special events that, members put together to benefit good causes. We talked about the PTSD Awareness 250 tonight, also the Drive for Suicide Prevention event earlier on in this year at Indianapolis. This group of guys, but also a lot of people do great events like this. I highly encourage you, if you want to get involved in a race like this the next time they're on LSRTV, make sure you follow them on Twitter. That's at Drive4SP. You've got all the information on their Twitter about their special events coming up, as well as their regular season races that they do. They do a full series with a bunch of guys. So again, that's on Twitter at Drive4SP. That's the number 4. And get yourself out on track. Donate to these guys so they can keep these events going. They've got links on there as well, so you can donate to all of the great organizations and the causes that these guys are benefiting. And the plus side to all of that is we get to come out here on a Friday night that typically, as noted earlier, Super Speedway Cup is off for a couple of weeks. They will be back and picking up this Friday time slot for another 18 weeks in a row, and about 2 weeks down the road from now. But we get to come back, we fill up an off week, we get to have some fun and benefit a good cause all at the same time. It doesn't get much better than that as qualifying gets set to round down to 0 left on the clock.
Yeah, a lot of really good causes in here, most notably suicide prevention. And we'll go ahead and make this point now and make this point multiple times during the broadcast. If you feel like you're in that sort of position, always know that 1-800-273-8255 is available for you if you need to talk to someone, and know that you are more loved than you recognize, and your impact is far greater than we can see ourselves. So definitely make sure you utilize that if you need help, or, for any sort of mental illness, disability, what have you. The biggest thing is always to just talk to people and let people know. It ends up being a stigmatized thing here in the United States, but never hurts to talk to someone, and that's usually the best way to start getting help. And that's the biggest key. It's just getting over that hurdle, and people tend to be more scared than they need to be on that sort of thing. So talking helps. Talking is the great thing.
And as qualifying draws to a close, and we get set to get tonight's PTSD Awareness 250 underway. Let's go trackside. We'll rack them and stack them, look top to bottom at tonight's LSRTV starting grid. A familiar name to us at LSRTV. In fact, a few of them going to make up your top couple of names, but Rodney Wofford going to be on pole position tonight with a 49.129. That will give him the top spot in Q, and he will be joined on the front row by the number 8 of Mark Jorgensen Jr., just 2/100ths of a second off of the pole time. More familiar names back on order number 2, a big pickup from practice, Brandon Chaburko. Going to start tonight in the Motorcraft Quick Lane Chevrolet off 3rd position. Chris Bassini to his right-hand side will start from 4th. Gavin Jones, driver of the number 12 tonight, can round out your top 5. He is on inside of row 3.
On the outside of row 3 is the 7 of David Power starting 6th. Nice tongue twister there. Brock Drury starts from the 7th position. Joey Lamb will begin tonight from 8th, and then it's Cody Eldred and Mark Vega starting 9th and 10th on the grid respectively.
Take a look at some of the names just outside of the top 10. You've got Andrew Cardinale in the number 22 Chevrolet, starting 11th position, to be joined by William Kruska, starting from 12th. Jack Price gets tonight's unlucky number 13th starting position tonight. We'll see if the Redline Synthetic Oil Silverado can get something going. He's accompanied on row 7 by 14th place starter and the driver who was 14th in practice earlier tonight. That's Blake Heither. Just behind them, Nicholas Schmieg will start in P15.
Last 5 drivers on the grid begins with Cole Palmer. He starts in the 16th position. Gary Weaver begins from 17th. 18th is where you'll find Hayden Harville. 19th, Hoyt Smith in the Coastal Carolina University Chevy Silverado. And rounding out the grid, the only driver not to take a time, Sean Downs in the number 33 truck will start 20th tonight, shotgun on the field.
So that's a look top to bottom at your LSRTV starting grid, and just taking a look, it looks like most everybody on the racetrack, maybe with the exception of Downs, who's not currently there, but he did qualify 10th. If he decides to roll from the pit lane, it'll put him at the back regardless. Also doing a note that David Powers, who we noted was qualified in the number 6 spot, will have an EOL penalty for the race, so his number 7 is going to drop to the tail end of the longest line as he approaches the American Ethanol green flag. So let's talk about this Talladega Super Speedway as we pace down the Alabama Gang Super Stretch. This racetrack, 2.666 miles in length, which means it only takes 94 laps to get to tonight's 250-mile distance. Turns 1 and 2 banked at 33 degrees. Same thing down in 3 and 4 if you don't want to get overly technical. The tri-oval, well, it's not classified as a turn, considering the fact that the start-finish line is much further than that. It might as well be its own. 16.5 degrees of banking. It is very cloudy out, very dark scene. It almost looks like it's going to rain. I promise you we will not have to go terrain delay coverage, but Pike, that could have been a little bit extra grip for these guys at a racetrack not as slick.
That's the thing. Without the sun, you have a little bit more grip because temps are cooler in the air and on the asphalt here at Talladega. Makes these cars a little bit easier to drive, but also can embolden some of these drivers too. So we'll have to see who plays out that balance here best tonight.
The pace car ducks down and away, and we are set to get underway from Talladega. As always, it's a pleasure to have you with us tonight on LSRTV and iRacing Live. Feeling in the hands of the number 3 of Ronnie Wofford as he comes to the start-finish line. Green flag flies, and we are underway for the PTSD Awareness 250 at Dega. Going to get him up to speed and through the gears for the first time to 1 and 2. Small advantage. Drivers on the inside of the racetrack as we try to get him up to full sun.
Everybody just kind of going through the gears and getting sorted out. A few cars staying up on the outside. Mark Jorgensen is still there, as is Chris Piscini, 2 of the Friday night regulars here on LSRTV. They may end up dropping back a little bit, though, because everybody behind them has now found their way to the bottom, all the way back to Mark Vega, who runs in the 11th position behind the 22 of Andrew Cardinal. So we'll see how they get sorted out here within the first few laps, but it looks like most people are trying to get to the bottom, at least towards the front of the field, and maybe towards the back of this group. They might stack them up too wide and start driving towards the front.
And it's really no surprise that that's going to be the strategy early on. We always compare Talladega to Daytona, and the fact that this racetrack's got a little bit more racetrack for you to work with, almost an extra lane opening outside, and these trucks can be a little bit more nifty when it comes to navigating and holding those 3 wide situations. But on the first 2.66 miles of 250, no real reason to force that issue, and it was your pole sitter who led lap number 1, Ronnie Wofford, just holding the inside. But here comes the drivers down the back straightaway. Jorgensen top side with the help from Piscini, maybe the Budweiser entry. Going to be able to get clear if he decides to move down, and he does. So first change for the race lead, a brief one as the 8 jumps right back up to work with the 1.
I wonder if that might have been a test for later on, if maybe Jorgensen decides to pull a move like that later in the race, if he's up towards the front of the field and has a chance to win this. It's a question of how much push do I need to get to the front of this field, and how quickly can I get down if I need to make that happen. It was interesting, I thought, that he went right back up to the top side as soon as he got the lead. So something tells me he might have that move saved, and he may pull that out again later as we get to maybe, 10 to go, 5 to go in this race.
And something else to note when you're talking about what kind of race we're going to see is that the field is not necessarily huge here tonight. 19 trucks did take the green flag, and we noted it on the grid that we didn't see Sean Downs take to the racetrack. He was the 10th best driver in practice, would have been the only driver not the queue. He did not take the green flag. He still has the option to if he wants to, but so far 19 trucks have got onto the racetrack tonight. So that leaves a reasonable amount of space for these guys to be able to either hold the lead pack and really just stay up on each other, or at the same time, drop back and not lose touch with the lead pack. But you don't necessarily all have to be up and breathing on each other's necks, and that's the key. So a little bit more space in the field, a little bit of a bigger racetrack in comparison to Daytona, and I think that this race should be able to provide us with an atmosphere that allows us to go green flag racing for quite some time. The X factor in that is it is Talladega, and temptation is always knocking on you, trying to get you to do something that you shouldn't. But so far, those top 4, they've stayed glued to each other through 4 laps. Nobody giving up quite yet.
Top 4 still up there, and the one thing I was making note of are the 3 drivers at the back of this field who have decided to run off the lead pack and hide out in the back in case anything happens up front. Gary Weaver, Hayden Harville, and David Powers have all formed a little line back there, a 3-car train, maybe about a second back of our lead pack here. And while everybody in the back of this lead pack kind of fans out, those 3 have decided to stay way, way back of everything. So in the event that something happens and we have a wreck up here in this lead pack, they'll have the time and they'll have the space to move out of the way and make sure they don't get caught up in it.
And something else, talking about those top four, well, we were talking about how Friday nights, typically Super Speedway Cup Series nights here. Well, how about the names? Wofford, Jorgensen, Chaburko, Piscini. I don't think it's a surprise that it's the Super Speedway ringers that are having their way early in this one. And again, the 8-1 you talked about, maybe it was a test when we saw Jorgensen go down to the inside again. He cleared Wofford, could have easily just stayed on the bottom, had a 3-car train going, and that one of Piscini could have either hoped to fall back in line behind the 21, or he could have fallen way back, or maybe it's because those guys know each other. And I was talking about how we don't necessarily have teams, concrete teams, working in these kind of special events. We've got 4 guys that are very tight right there working up front. Would not surprise me at all if they've all got each other queued up on the same radio channel and chatting.
Probably chit-chatting and making their things happen and doing what they need to do to stay up front as they run at the front of this field. Also want to note that Hoyt Smith gave a little bit of a bump to Andrew Cardinale down the back straightaway, and the 22 actually went off and went around on the pavement down there. Didn't have any damage, but he's now all by himself and 13 seconds back of the lead. So Cardinale will probably look for a first yellow and hopefully try and get the lucky dog back, but he's all by himself and without the draft, so he'll be down about 2 or 3 seconds each lap compared to the speed that the leaders are running.
And I said that, you might want to drop back at the lead pack. You can't do that by yourself. You need somebody to be there working with you. Ronnie Wofford was successful for the opening 6 laps, but not the 7th time. New race leader, Brandon Chaburko, made move to the outside, took the lap lead. He drops down to the inside, and here comes Jorgensen and Piscini now on the outside of the racetrack. And, well, Jorgensen had it, gave it away, and, well, he did technically take the lead in this race. He never got credit for leading a lap. He might be able to do it at lap number 7. He'll go to the inside in front of that number 8 machine, Mark Jorgensen Jr. on the bottom of the racetrack, and we will now see if he's going to be able to hold it through to that point. Piscini now leading the outside, and first different driver, I guess, trying to mix their way up into this is that 12 of Gavin Jones, second driver in line on the outside of the racetrack. He'll only be about 4th or 5th at the start-finish line, but maybe in a position to maybe push that Pennzoil Chevrolet in front of the 8 to the race lead. Then he gets control of the outside line. Maybe he and that 81 of Joey Lamb could work together. Not going to happen that ton, though. Just food for thought as we see some of the non-Super Speedway Cup guys try to break down that fortress.
Oh, wow, big move there. 2 big moves there. One from Jorgensen to throw the block on Wofford, and then Chaburko went right down to the bottom and has to check up just a little bit. I think he maybe given a nice little love tap there to Jorgensen as they went through turn 3, but everybody made it through clean. But people already swerving left and right on the back straightaway here at Talladega, 8 laps in. It's that kind of dicey racing that usually leads to trouble later on, so we'll see if that's just one of those cases where they're getting it out of their system now, or it ends up being a harbinger and a sort of foreshadowing event here. Maybe we see more of it as we get closer to the end.
Just trying to take a look back about 3-4 rows, see what's kind of brewing behind your race leaders. How about a call to Nicholas Schmid in the number 99 McDonald's entry? He is the 3rd driver currently in the line on the inside of the racetrack. He's behind the 14 of Cody Eldred. Schmid started this race in 15th position, and well, things haven't looked all that thrilling up front. You've seen a handful of lead changes. I think almost everyone. And those top 4 qualifiers have had an opportunity to lead at least 1 lap. But while they appear to be working together, it doesn't seem so thrilling for the guys behind. Schmid's been doing a good job of working his way up through the back. Was only 17th best in practice, qualifying about on par with that with P15. But up inside of the top 6 early is a key thing. Something that I was really listening to watching some of the Xfinity and Cup qualifying today, Pike, was people talking about qualifying. And qualifying on plate tracks and kind of made me think a little bit about the sim. Qualifying up front is never a bad thing. Some people might have a strategy that requires dropping back, and in that case, you might as well just fall back. But I'm not all sure how important qualifying is in a race like this where, going back to the 19 truck total count that I mentioned earlier, I feel like that's enough space for people to be able to work their way through the field. Now, if you start back, you might end up like an Andrew Cardinale, who we just talked about not all that long ago, or Hayden Harville, David Powers, Gary Weaver, who are 13 seconds back. But I feel like Schmid is doing what those guys could have done, so maybe those guys dropping back as part of a strategy early on. Hard to tell.
And we've seen strategies from all over the place in the pack here over the years at these plate tracks. You can run it from the front and stay out front and try and lead every lap and stay out of the trouble that way, or you can find your way to the back, like what we're seeing with Harville and Powers and Weaver and company, and just lay back and make sure you don't get caught up in anything and you have enough room to evade it all. But I think the one place you don't really want to be for the majority of the race is right in the middle, because if you're right in the middle, you don't have any room to evade any of the wrecks that happen in front of you or in some cases behind. And you end up in a very, very tricky spot where you can't really evade anything either, because you've got cars packed up like sardines, both to your front, to your outside, to your inside, to your rear, depending on where you are in the pack. So I think you just don't want to be trapped and boxed in. That's the biggest key in all of this. If you stay in a position like that for too long, then you only tempt fate, I think, in a sense, especially here at these plate tracks.
You take a look at the top 5 right now, 3 of them on the outside of the racetrack and 2 on the bottom. Somewhat goes against conventional wisdom that most drivers would be stacked up on the inside, and it would be the outliers working on the outside of the racetrack. And again, you've got the drivers who started up front together, and then Cody Eldred, who he himself has done a good job, not to pass him up, talking about Schmieg and Kruska and Price, some of the other drivers, all who started outside of the top 10 but have worked their way in. Eldred started 9th and runs in 4th right now, but again, kind of in no man's land. Does he have to maybe try to break one of these 4 off from each other, or is he going to be forced to drop back to an 81 a Lamb, a 99 a Schmieg, or somebody else and kind of team up to get after the guys up front, because they seem to be in a pretty solid set. The 2 on the inside and 2 on the outside of the racetrack, and it's going to be hard to get out of the position that he's in, because he can't go anywhere on the inside. There's a car in front of him, there's 2 cars on his right-hand side, and the car behind him is only going to keep pushing him forwards, so he's just kind of riding at the moment. Now, it's not 13 of 94, not a terrible time to ride, but the 14 trying to look for something. I'm sure he would not object to leading a line for just a little bit, getting some clean air to the nose of that Chevrolet Silverado, getting some bonus points while he does it.
The problem with that is that Brandon Jaburko's done a really nice job, along with Mark Jorgensen, of controlling the lanes here. Whatever lane gets the momentum at the front of the field, he's either dropped down in front of or jumped up in front to block. So, and you see it right there again, and they make contact at the tri-oval, so everybody getting a little bit testy right there. I think that was Rodney Walford and Mark Jorgensen getting into it, but Jaburko's been able to lead this race and lead a good chunk of this race so far, specifically because he's controlled whatever line has the momentum. Other thing I've noticed in all this, speaking of momentum, is that Chris Passini has consistently stayed on the outside. He seems like a driver that may well be committed to running the top side no matter who's up there. And there's some advantages to that. You can hold out the throttle longer. You don't necessarily have to check up as much if you're in the draft, because you have that little extra room that you have to run just to complete a lap anyway. So you can stay full throttle. And if everybody underneath you is checking up, we see it a little bit more at Daytona than we do here at Talladega, but it still applies, if they check up and they continually check up in the draft, then the outside lane, who's been on the throttle the whole time, can actually jump up a spot or 2 and gain some position. So something that we'll have to watch for. But I think if you want to go to the outside, teaming up with Chris Passini seems like a really good bet. Because around at the end of the race, I think he might be the one leading everybody on the outside lane trying to get the victory.
And I'll tell you what, if we cut about a clip of this action up front out, toss it up onto Facebook or Twitter, you would think that to the regular viewer that the guys up front hate each other. But we were talking about, you noted it earlier on actually, that you can, depending on, how familiar you are with somebody, how familiar you race with them, you kind of understand how they drive. You can be a little bit more aggressive. Well, the top 4, we keep talking about how they're buddy-buddy and they're on the radio with each other, and now they do stuff like that, sideways at a corner number 4. Watford 15 degrees to the inside and hangs on. It's because they know each other. Let's not get this confused, Pike. They're not buddy-buddy on Fridays. They hate each other. They'll go after each other for the win, but they know each other so well, that might have been a little bit of a step over that line, but they're completely comfortable doing that all night long.
Well, when you run super speedways every Friday night, like a lot of these guys in the front of the field have, then you have the experience to get away with things like that. And you can pull those sorts of crazy moves, and it's okay, because the other drivers know how you race because they've raced with you a lot. I think that's, for the guys who run on Friday night consistently here on LSRTV, that's going to be a big advantage they have, especially as we get down to the end of this race. You can pull off the crazy moves if you're in that pack of drivers and get away with it because the experience level is so much higher than it is with some of these other drivers in the pack at super speedways. So if they can make it advantage them, I think the question is, if you're not part of our regular Friday night coverage and you're running this race, how do you band together to find a way to stop those drivers and work so that the odds are in your favor and not theirs?
And we keep talking about how it's every man for himself, but that's the question I posed about Eldred a couple of laps ago. Is he going to have to kind of give up? Not that he's not working with the guys behind him. I mean, he's got the Don and Drury behind him. They've been bump drafted pretty good, but again, he can only do so much when there's cars in front of him and cars next to him. Does he have to kind of back off? He's kind of sandwiched in between those four. Does he have to back off, get with the Don in the 88, maybe try to go up to the middle or form a third lane of the racetrack, or can he do it by himself? 4 drivers is a lot to get around, and again, I think that the faithfulness amongst these 4 is going to be shortly lived. The problem is if they can hold true with each other till about lap number 93 and a half, then that's not going to leave you a big window to be able to do something about it. You got to keep in mind that through that, you're going to have to go through green flag pit stops, having help when you go through that cycle, and having a group of cars to come down and get out with, especially guys who you've raced with before, and you can get down clean and get off clean with, which is the biggest thing. You can all get to the box, but if you get separated, it's not going to help you much. That's going to be big, and so many other things. This lead pack, though, slowly starting to dwindle down in numbers. It's basically all the trucks that what you see in the tight shot on your screen, P1 through P10. It was everybody at the start of this race, but you mentioned Andrew Cardinale first as the first driver who had lost touch with the lead pack. He has since been lapped. He runs 19th at a 19 truck, 16th, 17th, and 18th on the racetrack right now. Hayden Hartville, Gary Weaver, David Powers, they are 30 seconds off of the lead pack. You've got 12th through 15th. Cole Palmer, Blake Heather, Mark Vega, Hoyt Smith, they're over 12 seconds off of the lead pack. And then Gavin Jones at 11th has just fallen, lost touch as well. So if you're the last couple of drivers in the pack, you really got to be up on the wheel to not lose touch. You check up for a checkup at all, and you're going to have the suck up in front of you, but with nobody pushing, it's very easy to lose contact with these guys up front. And the difference between being in the pack and not being in the pack, well, you're racing to Rodney Wofford, 195 in the center of the quarter. You look back at a Gavin Jones by himself, he's getting down to about 179. It's a pretty big difference.
To run at the back of a lead pack requires a very distinct and precise blending of 2 separate mentalities. One would be the go up to the front, make sure you can hang on and do everything you can to win the race. And the other is the stay patient, make sure you don't do anything crazy and survive and make sure you're there at the end. You have to fight your way up to hang on to that pack. And if you go crazy, as we almost saw right there, Rodney Wofford and Brandon Chaburko getting into it. Chaburko still down on the apron there, but he'll get let back in by the 14 of Cody Eldred. So no major issues there. But if you're at the back of the pack, as I was saying, you have to fight to stay right on the tail of it with everything you got. But you also, if you're going to stay back there, have to make sure that you don't press too far up, because then you end up right in the center of the storm and end up just getting destroyed if anybody wrecks in front of you. And usually your chances of getting caught up in something are higher if you're in the middle of the pack as opposed to being either up out front or towards the rear. So it's a fine tightrope that you have to walk. And right now, if you're looking at the likes of Brock Drury, Jack Price, they're the ones that position now. So I got to be really careful if you're those two. Just have to make sure that you stay with the lead pack, because I know those drivers at the front are trying to run off the front of this field and get everybody separated, so the lead pack just dwindles to a very small number.
A little bit of 3 wide going on up front. It's not going to be one of the drivers trying a hostile takeover of the lead pack. It's that 21 machine of Brandon Chaburko, who is a friend of that third most lane of the racetrack. But now you see drivers starting to work their way up. That 8 of Mark Jorgen still leads the way on the inside, and it's the 1 of Chris Basidi who still leads the way on the outside line. But the 99 of Schmieg's in a good spot right now. He's moved himself up and kind of wiggled his way past that 14 of Eldred. Eldred was in that position for the longest time, and he now finds himself about 4 spots back. Not that that's a terrible thing. We're going to be approaching pit stops rather shortly as we work lap number 9, or rather number 22 of 94 total on the evening. But when you drop back just a little bit, again, assuming that at the tail end of that lead pack, as we were just discussing, you can keep contact with the guys in front of you, kind of opens up your eyes a little bit and get a great view of the 2x2x2 that is 3 wide up at the front of the field, and a little bit of rubbing in the corner. 4 wide's not going to work. Really tight that time, down in 1 and 2, as Chaburko thought about helping Joey Lamb on that third lane of the racetrack. Backs off of it as we come back at a quarter number 4. Tight call there. Third lane, though, it'll work.
I saw Kruska and Schmid get into it there just a little bit. I saw Cheburko make contact with the 81 of Joey Lamb a little bit and all that. They were getting a little bit crazy. I wonder if everybody's just trying to position themselves well for pit status, because if you get a consistent green flag run like the one we're having right now, that becomes the trickiest point of the race and one of the places where you can end up having the most trouble. You have to make sure you don't lock up the brakes coming into pit road. Make sure you don't run into anyone in front of you as you get down to the 55-mile-an-hour pit road speed limit here, and just make sure that you get in, get off clean. Don't overshoot your box. Get in cleanly, get out cleanly. Don't speed, because then you have to start to pass through the races just about toast at that point. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen on pit road that can go wrong. You just have to make sure you don't overthink it so you can get everything right.
And it also depends how many guys are going to see come down pit road. Are you going to be the first driver to make a move, or are you going to kind of make a reactionary move? If this group of four that we keep referring to, assuming that they are in communication, working together as we predict that they would be, if they all come down together, are they going to try to maybe wait out until everybody else is pitted so they can pit by themselves in hopes that after the cycle of pit service, it's their group of four and they can maybe break away a little bit? Or are they going to be the first drivers to come down pit road? And are we going to see, the guys in 7th or 8th position a little bit further back? Eldred and Drury, even Kruska in that number 88 machine, or the 9 who's fallen back a little bit on the outside. If they're far enough back, they can see those drivers start to hit pit road. Would they just follow them down pit road? Are you waiting on somebody else to make a move? And when you've got certain drivers in contact with each other and not everybody chatting at the same time, it's kind of hard to make these plans in secret, especially if you're not teammates with somebody. You can't just change what radio channel you're on in the middle of the race unless you got a spotter or somebody on top of the box in sim with you that can make those kind of calls for you. So pit stops are always a very crucial and dicey part of the race, and so was that time at a quarter number 2. It all seems to be going around about Ronnie Watford. He's a busy guy tonight. Got a whale of a push from Joey Lamb. Tight on the outside of Cheburko. Here we go, 3 wide again.
Cheburko tried to get that run that Wofford had and tried to jump up in front of him and realized he jumped up a little bit too late and thought better of it before he got turned around and completely wrecked his night. So he'll sit there and now ride right behind Mark Jorgensen, who was going to swap spots with Chris Piscini. It was Jorgensen down low and Piscini up high in a good part of this first portion of the race. But now you've got Jorgensen up at the front of the field and in the lead, and on the outside, though he, thought about dropping to the inside and then thought better of it because he's getting such a good push from Cheburko anyway. So, interesting thing I think worth noting is that you have the trio of Harville and Weaver and Powers maybe some 3-4 seconds ahead of this lead pack. So they might hit the lap traffic here right around the time they start thinking about coming to pit road. That could make things a little bit dicey as well.
That group of 3 drivers running 16th through 18th position are about to be caught by your race leaders. They're 43 seconds off of the top spot. That puts them about 6 seconds in front of your race leaders, and that's a good number of cars that these guys are going to have to work by. Best case scenario, as they all go up to the outside of the racetrack, your race leaders go on by without a problem, and they're in communication on the in-sim radio at the moment, trying to chat with each other, I believe, and they are going to go to the outside of the racetrack. It looks like that time at a 2 in anticipation for this lead pack to come on by. But sometimes all it takes is one lapper, not necessarily checking the mirror as often as he should, and they hold the white line or the yellow line on the inside of the racetrack, and it can get into one of those hold your breath moments. Something else that doesn't help is being 3 wide. When you're coming to get some lap traffic, the 3 and the 21 going to swap up positions. That was like an old school 2-car tandem swap there on the outside of the racetrack to get it back to 2 wide as we catch the lap traffic at a 4.
Lap traffic will go high, so no problems to the leaders there. And meanwhile, I've noticed that while they go high, everybody in this lead pack has gone to the bottom. Have to go all the way back to Wofford, who currently runs in the 6th position at the line and is trying to get that outside line going again, but he just doesn't really have any help besides Cheburko. We know those 2 are strong. They run regularly here on Friday nights on LSRTV on these super speedway tracks, but 2 cars can only do so much. It's a question of who decides to jump up and take the run away from Wofford. No takers yet. Will Cody Eldred go for it? No. So Wofford and Cheburko are actually going to push themselves back up towards relevance in this pack here, which is interesting. Those 2 have got some really strong pieces. If they could just get one more truck to help them, how that could change things.
And trying to get caught up to the back end of that lead pack was really a good opportunity for those guys. And I've seen people kind of do the the not so polite way of doing it, and that's what I had noted just a little bit earlier. You hold the yellow line, and that main pack's going to kind of snake up and accordion around you, and the leaders are going to drop down in front of you, and eventually they'll just kind of merge into the middle of the pack. Now, not a good way to make friends. It's a solid way of kind of getting yourself into a race for the lucky dog position, but when you've got three of those guys working together, the best thing they can do is get in a line and just run. But being a lap down this early in the race before pit stops puts them in a really tough position, especially because the more drivers that lose touch of the lead pack, the more spread out we get, the higher chance, just probability, that this race could actually go green nonstop. We're almost a third of the distance so far tonight from Talladega, and while we have not had any close calls, so far clean and green up at the front of the field with Wofford, pole sitter, still up in the mix. He led that lap.
Up in the mix, but pit stops here will be starting this time by Brandon Chaburko. Just sent the message and said he's bringing that number 21 truck down pit road. So question will be how quickly he can get down there, as looks like we have a motor expire on Martin Vega's machine, so he got into trouble earlier, and there's going to be smoke around the leaders, but I don't think that'll cause any problems. But Chaburko going to try and find his way down pit road as soon as he can, but he's trapped on the outside, so it might be another lap until he makes it to pit road. Let's see if he ducks down there. No, not yet. Okay, so Chaburko tried to make it happen, didn't have any room. I think there might have been an incident there with Vega and another truck as well.
He's smoking.
What happened there?
13's got a lot of smoke coming out of turn 4. I think somebody else is as well. The 13's been smoking for some time. We had an incident on the back stretch. Back at lap 29, it was the 13 and the 30. The 22 had some sort of big checkup coming off of the corner. I don't know if he lost an engine. He did. So Andrew Cardinal loses the engine. Vega plows into him. The 30 gets into him, and both of those drivers to the inside fence. Vega goes up on his roof and back on the all fours. Still drives it back to pit lane. Very Clint Boyer-esque in that notion, but because all of that was below the double yellow, we stay green. Can't say clean anymore, but no caution from that incident towards the back of the pack.
No caution from the incident, and those drivers, for the most part, are done. Cardinal is actually still going on track. He just got lapped another time here by this lead pack, but there's so much damage on the front end of that number 22 truck that he will likely be a non-factor for the rest of this race unless everybody else decides to clean house ahead of him. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see how many drivers of that bunch decide to try and come back out on track. But for most intents and purposes, their days are all done. Not going to be a factor in the victory of this race and who wins this race when we get down to it in about 60-plus laps. That being said, we still have Jorgensen and Chaburko and Wofford and Pacini, all four Friday night regulars who are 1, 2, 3, 4 in the front of this field, but they've got to be thinking about pit stops. Chaburko hasn't been able to get to the bottom, so he hasn't been able to get onto pit road cleanly, but I know he's thinking of it. The question then becomes, who's thinking of coming on pit road with him?
Well, if you're not going to be able to make it, at least from this point on, another 14 laps, then I think we're at a good spot, because that would be the next interval in this race. You want to get to the halfway point, you get to about lap 47, you can do it on one stop. You're not going to make it that many laps. So the 1/3 marker, I'd said we're a couple of laps away for the 1/3 marker when Chaburko queued up on the radio and started talking about pit stops. I would have been a little bit surprised if they had pitted at that moment at lap 30, because that puts you just a tad bit shy of being able to make this on a two-stop strategy. You do 30 laps, you do 30 laps, you got to stretch 33. Might have been a little bit tighter, although as we work 33 laps right now, it appears that that window is wide open. So despite the fact that that group up front has not committed to come down pit road yet, and in all honesty, they don't seem overly concerned about coming down, because you would think they'd be single filing out. They appear to do a little bit of that time by the start finish line, but for as much 2x2 as they've been doing, I feel like they've been pretty comfortable. Now though, past the 1/3 marker, if you can make it this many laps on your next run, you can make this on a 2-stop race, and I think now basically that window's wide open for somebody to come down in, and I think 2 stops really the only strategy that's feasible.
Unless we get a yellow, that's the crazy thing. That will throw all sorts of monkey wrenches into the strategy. You're right if we go green the whole way, but And we'll have to see if we actually do go green the whole way. And now as we come off of turn 4, who's going to come down pit road? Survey says nobody. So they're going to stay out another lap and stretch it, try and make those last 2 runs that you mentioned, Evan, a little bit shorter so you can push a little bit harder and maybe go a little bit crazier with your lane blocking moves and your side-by-side moves, because you have just that extra less tire wear that you had to deal with in that final run as opposed to the first 2 runs in theory. So we'll have to see what happens this time by, but everybody all single file. They look like they're getting ready to come.
And this would, typically be the moment where you say, well, the longer you stay out, you want a little bit more fuel in the tank in case you got a green, white checker. Not a thing. We're going 94 laps, 250 miles, no more and no less. So that's not a concern for these drivers. So as you noted, maybe run the tires a little bit longer while you're single file. You have a little bit shorter stint to the end. Here we come for pit stops. Watford, Chaburko, Jorgensen, Piscini. Looks like almost everybody in those top 4 at least are in. Cody Eldred going to come down with them. Piscini as well, so it looks like about 3/4 of that main pack down pit road. Only drivers to stay out: Jack Price, William Kruska, Joey Lamb, and Drury.
So it's the Friday Nighters and Cody Eldred, and then the rest of the field presumably on the next lap. Looks like everybody got into their boxes cleanly of the group of drivers that came in on this lap, so they should be able to make it out and make it back onto the track together. And now we wait to see the rest of the leaders and how they come down pit road and make things happen.
And we assume that they would have come in this next time around. So Price, Lamb, Kruska all lined up single file. Drury a little bit further back off for them. He is in a tough spot if he gets separated, but they do not make the duck down to pit road that lap. That's bad news for Drury because he's going to lose more time and distance to them. And unlike in a typical 1.5 mile track, you don't necessarily have to bum rush pit road after the guys in front of you pit, because it's not like they're getting a huge advantage by fresh tires. But that's the thinking on an intermediate racetrack. The leader pits, everybody else wants to pit because he's got fresh tires and he's probably running 2 to 3 seconds quicker per lap. You don't really have to do that at a plate track for the likes of Jack Price and company, but you would expect that the fuel numbers line up somewhat similar to one another, and that they would be down pit road shortly thereafter. So we'll keep an eye if lap number 37 is going to be the time for them to come down, unless you can go 47 laps. Lap 32, lap 40 don't make a difference. It's still a 2-stop race, but still not biting are those top 3.
I think the most important thing for these top 3, top 4 drivers and the ones that they've collected is that you have to be able to draft well together. That's how we saw the likes of Chaburko and Piscini and Wofford and company make up all that time in the pack when they were all together. They drafted together really well. They were able to hang with maybe inches between their front and rear bumpers and get a really, really nice run on the inside, on the outside, and gain some time. The same thing has to happen here with these front drivers, because we know that the Friday night guys are going to be able to do that, and they're going to draft single file and be one gigantic bullet train of trucks back towards the front of this field. They'll gain some time if these guys separate, so they've got to stick together to make things happen.
And those drivers are 41 seconds off of the top spot. And how about this? Cody Eldred was in front of them the last time by, them being the 4, Wofford, Chaburko, Jorgensen, and Piscini, because Eldred had a little bit of a better stop amongst that group. All 4 drivers stepped out from behind him. Eldred goes from 7th to 11th, and in fact to the point where now he has lost touch with that pack of 4, and that train is going to run on and away with this race. And Eldred, who seemed to be in a great position, pitted with the leaders, came down, left pit road in front of them, in the end gets left to dry.
Yeah, really, really unfortunate there for Eldred that he's kind of just, I think hanging on is the best word that we can use here in this case, because he didn't quite get up with the draft and get caught up with everybody. But man, those Friday night guys are really, really working together. Exactly what I said. Right there, right on top of each other in the draft. Barely any space between front and rear bumpers. The tighter you can get in line together, the faster you're going to be. And that's exactly what these drivers are doing. So now the question falls on Price, and Kruska, and Lamb, and Hyther, who's in there now 2 laps down, but is with the leaders at the moment. How well can you draft, and how long can you go on fuel?
Well, I said if you can't go to lap 47, don't worry about it. I'm still skeptical about that unless they got another fuel cell in the flatbed of those things. And again, I just don't see the benefit, a difference of going lap 30, lap 40, because again, I think they're losing time right now. There's 3 of them working together, and they're doing a good job at that, I might add. But Wofford, Chaburko, Jorgensen, Piscini, 7, 8, 9, and 10 at the moment are working together too. They've got one extra truck, and they just appear all night long to be a smidge faster. We'll look at the lap times. Jack Price this time by leading this race with a 50.042, and the lead car back in that group that we were talking about, Wofford with a 49.9. So it's not by a lot, but they are quicker. If you pit at lap 30, you're not going to be able to make it to the race in any less or more stops in a row if you had to pit at lap 40. But if you can make it to the halfway point, that's where it changes. I would be extremely surprised if they get to lap 47, but they're closer to lap 47 than they are when everybody else pitted.
It's going to be close. We'll see how long they can make it, or if they're just waiting for the yellow, or if the likes of Kutzka, Lim, and Smith know, or rather, Heither know something that we don't, and they're just sitting behind Price and letting him poke the air and trying to save some fuel in the draft so they can make it on one stop. But that's one of those two is definitely the goal. They're either trying to make it on one pit stop, or they're waiting and hoping that a yellow comes out. So we'll see if they end up lucky or if they end up having to pit before all them, because you're right. If you can't make it to 47, you still have to pit twice, and you just end up losing that time over these 7 laps that they're running right now, and you end up in a worse position than you were when you started. So we'll have to see how this plays out. It'll be interesting.
5 laps away from that point. There's a couple of drivers in the middle of all of this. You've got Hoyt Smith, who just came down to the pit lane in 4th, Cole Palmer, who came down in 5th. Those drivers had yet to come down to the pit lanes at 92 and a 24 could come in this time. That leaves only Brock Drury as an odd man out in this thing, and he has just gotten passed up by everybody else as he pitted a lap prior to this one. Joey Lamb problems on the pit lane entry, though. He spins it out as those guys finally decided to come down pit road. He was a little bit hot on the back bumper, but the 71 locked it up, went around. That does solve the question. They cannot go to halfway, and it cost one of them dearly.
And Lamb is going to struggle now. He locked up the brakes on pit entry, swung the rear end of that 81 truck around, and now is going to lose about 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds to this pack. So he will be drafting all by himself until he gets swept up by one of these packs. And now that just makes the problem even harder here for some of the other drivers. Maybe some issues on the 30. I think he's waiting. Yes. So I think those two, the 30 and the 81, might be trying to draft together, but that'll just hurt those two as well, because you're going to end up in a smaller pack than the like of Jorgensen and Wofford and Piscini and Chaburko. So those 4 really got it hooked up, and you can see them here. They're going to come around and get the lead back here from the likes of Price and Kutzka and company.
And some of those names, not even to the point where they can't get hooked up with each other yet. That's the speed difference. They did a pretty good job, I will say, blended it back out on the racetrack relatively close to one another, but we've got that many more laps rounded up of just building momentum. It doesn't, you can get the draft. You're not going to be doing 195 miles an hour 2 laps off of a restart. So those guys did a fantastic job of pitting early, grouping up together, and well, I said that the pit stops are a good way to separate one another, and I had questioned, are we going to see those 4 come in? Are drivers going to follow them in? Are they going to intentionally try to do the opposite? And I said that after the cycle of pit stops, we may just end up with a 4-driver train up front. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Running 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the racetrack. The top 4 starters, top 4 on track by a good distance.
Top 4 made it a priority to just draft well and draft away from everybody and just dump them all. And it was hard to do when you had everybody bunched up together, but the pit stops allow for you to come up with strategies like that and make them work. And boy, have they ever executed brilliantly. Kutzka and Price are the next 2 in line, but it's only 2 cars running together, and they're already down 2 seconds to the leaders. So nobody's drafting better than the front 4 right now. They are driving away from everyone at the front of this field.
And I don't think that the guys behind them are necessarily going to be able to look down the line in this run as an opportunity to catch up to these guys. Again, one thing that we always talk about on Friday nights is that these guys are really good on plate tracks, and we'll see some of the super speedway guys show up on a Monday night here or there, or some of the other special events on the non-plate tracks, and they can hold their own too. But You could throw a driver from the NASCAR iRacing Pro Series or a driver from the NASCAR Pecan Free Series out there, and these guys are good. They're going to go right up to them, if not put on a clinic. This is what they do. This is their niche, and they own it. And they are at a 14-second advantage over the, three. Brock Drury has fallen back with them, but as we noted, Drury had actually left pit road in front of Wofford, Jorgensen, Piscini, and Chaburko, and they left him. And so technically the three of them, but it's a four-car group now, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the racetrack, running a little bit further back, but they tried to outsmart them. Maybe it was a desperation move, knowing that, hey, if we just do the same thing as them, they're just going to outrun us. And it was one of those, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Try a strategy, see what happens. The cards are stacked against you. Why not go for it? The result has not gone in their favor, though. And I think that we're going to be keeping an eye on Kruska and Price, who run 5th and 6th position on the racetrack. They are 7 seconds off of the top spot. If those two cars, how quickly they will be caught by the 3 cars working behind them. But these top 4 in a beautiful position right now to put the feet up, turn on the last little bit of the MMA fight or whatever that's still going on in the Daytona infield, wait till the next cycle of pit stops, and then have some fun late.
Yeah, these guys in front of the field, I think niche racing is the big key that you brought up here. We saw it on Wednesday night here on LSRTV in the Cars Esport Tour when Logan Clampett came in and ran at Martinsville Speedway and got beat by the regular short track drivers on that night. And here it's the same sort of principle. The drivers who run the super speedways on Friday nights, 1, 2, 3, 4, because they just got that extra experience here. And we think plate tracks are plate tracks are plate tracks, and it's all the same, and the strategy is kind of obvious, but there's something to be said for drivers that can really execute on strategies with pinpoint precision, and that is exactly what these front 4 are doing at the moment. It is the execution of their strategies and their ways and means of racing that has them up here, and everybody else has just been a little bit laissez-faire, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think they've just all kind of been played out of it. It's going to take something big now, some sort of big accident on the part of the front 4 to really shake their grasp and stranglehold of this race.
Something like a caution flag would definitely do the trick, but again, as noted earlier, more drivers have gotten followed back, and there's that element, but then every time you get to a cycle of pit stops, you saw a driver spin it onto pit road in that cycle alone. It didn't trigger a caution flag. We saw 2 drivers get together a little bit before the pit stop. One driver ended up on his lid before coming back down on the all 4 Goodyear Wranglers. That didn't trigger a caution flag. Either or of those could have brought out a yellow. This thing could have changed, but because it was below that yellow line, it's kind of a toss-up on if the sim's going to trigger the caution flag to come out. It did not in either circumstance, and we stay green. But if we had 2 incidents involving 3 trucks coming up to our first cycle of pit stops and we have to pit once more, it says that it's not going to happen again, but at least for the moment. And what you're noticing up front with these top 4 is they were really going at each other early. I mean, we were kind of having to explain, listen, we're talking about how much these guys cooperate. They look like they're trying to wreck each other. They don't dump the 3 off into the safer barrier coming out of turn number 4 not all that long ago. They didn't do it, but, they've been all over each other. They're not like that now. They could. They've got a big gap, but I think they realize that they're in a fantastic spot right now. No reason to take one another out. They'll save that for the last lap. They'll wreck each other pike when they're close enough to the start-finish line. That all of them can slide and flip across the line in front of the guys that'll be 30 seconds behind them in 5th on back. But at the moment, I think that they like where they are.
Yeah, and if you end up wrecking at the end and you go upside down across the start-finish line, you still get points and you still end up finishing in a good spot. Just ask Elliott Sadler back in 2004. Went over the line on his lid and ended up coming back on all 4 wheels and still had a decent finishing position in his race. So it doesn't really matter what happens if you go for broke there in the final corner. The key is to make sure that you don't do that before the final corner and you still have a car that you can wreck, I guess, if you end up deciding to race that way. Sort of counterintuitive to the whole racing thing. You want to finish with a clean car, obviously, but that's the kind of level that these guys have to go for, because especially when you've got the experience of these 4, this is, some of the best that you'll see in the entire sim on plate tracks, and it's going to have to take something that crazy at times to put yourself out in front and get the victory. That's the tricky thing here. The question is, how hard do you push?
Well, they weren't able to make it this far without coming down to the pit lane, but we have crossed the halfway point in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250, so we will take this opportunity, as always, to take a peek at our iRacing Midway Race break brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Caution flag is out. That's the twist that we were alluding to, and all it took was a plug to bring it out. Problems with Hayden Harville.
Harville, I think, got some help, and it looks like that help came from the 92 of Hoyt Smith. Yep. That's exactly what happened. Got into him once, and then the 25 checked up, trying to not hit. I think that might have been Andrew Cardinal ahead of him. And then, yes, it was Cardinal. And then got a bump the second time from Smith, and into the wall he went and took out a few other cars, too. Gary Weaver got caught up in that incident as well. So I was thinking to myself in my head that this race may well go caution-free because it had been so clean, but here we are. Everybody wrecking here. First yellow of the night on lap 51, and that almost happened right in front of the leaders, so that could have been very, very hairy very quickly. They, in some sense, were lucky to get away from it.
So we'll hold off on that check top to bottom because the running order is probably going to shuffle up just a little bit, and now things get very fun. Because those guys went, 42 laps, Mike, before they came down pit road? We're going to have 42 laps to go this next time by, so those top four are not going to enjoy the benefits of a 22-second advantage any longer, and this may, depending on if you maybe come down top off or if you do any fuel saving coming to the green or under the green, might be all the fuel you need to the end. We'll find out, expecting everybody down pit road as Wofford brings us in.
Everybody down pit road, you want to make sure you don't overshoot your box or undershoot it in cases. That's always the biggest issue here when we pit under caution in the sim, because the sim controls how long your stop is. So just make sure you get in clean and do everything you can to make sure that you get off pit road as soon as you can. And then I wonder who might attempt to try and clutch and coast or do something to try and save just that little bit of fuel, because it will be tight, I think. You're going to be within 1 to 2 laps at the end. I think, especially if you set your draft, you'll be able to make it, but I'm not certain that that's a guarantee. And I think especially for the 4 Friday night drivers, this completely blows their strategy of just running up at the front of the field by themselves out of the water, because this caution will bring the, I believe, 11 drivers on the lead lap, maybe 10 once we see who survives that wreck. But they'll all be back within the pack, and all of the Friday night drivers will have to deal with the company that have been caught back up by that yellow flag. So we'll have to see how they tweak this and tweak their strategy and run things, but it's going to be a little bit different from here on out. Not what they expected, I think.
Couple of drivers due up to take a wave by to get back on the lead lap. So before we take a look at our running order, we'll take this quick opportunity to step aside, and we will do so and go LSRTV nonstop. As we head to the break, let's take a look at iRacing's newest addition coming to the service, Time Attack.
guys, I'm Scott Speed, driver of this amazing Volkswagen Beetle GRC car. I got good news for the iRacing fam. We got this coming in. I'm currently working on it myself personally to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. With the addition of dirt and now this mean car, it is gonna be so fun. And it's gonna be available free to all the iRacing members. Personally, I can't wait to get out there and race you guys on it.
Welcome back live to the Talladega Super Speedway as we get set for our first restart off of a caution flag tonight. Going to have 55 laps complete in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250. We're happy that you're hanging tight with us late into the evening, and for those on the East Coast side of things, early into your weekend here with us. So caution flag coming out just after our first cycle of green flag service. The drivers who stayed out the longest on that run came into pit at the end of lap 42, coming to take lap 43. This restart with 39 laps to go means we should, assuming we don't have any more incidents and cautions tend to breed cautions, can make it to the end of this race. Restart's going to put Cole Palmer to the race lead. Rodney Wofford going to join him on the front row, and the whole running order is at the top of your screen. American Ethanol green flag flies, not a good jump by the 24, and it's going to put Wofford, who started on pole, right back up front.
24 has nose damage. That's the one thing I noticed, and I don't think he ever really had a chance because there's enough on the front end of his Toyota Tundra to really throw things off. So be curious to see how that car functions in the draft, but in the lead, I don't think he will be able to do all that much, and he is kind of struggling just to get to the rear bumper of Mark Jorgensen. Might be one of those cases where he just slides out of the way or gets a bumper, maybe goes to the outside. Maybe gets a little bit of help from Cody Eldred to get in the front, and then they make contact. Back in the back of the field, is there going to be a wreck behind them?
Yes. Oh, there goes the 71.
71 goes around to bring out yellow flag number 2, and he collected, I think the 30 might have been the other one.
Somebody else spinning too, the 1. Piscini's involved.
Piscini goes around too. So let's take a look at the replay here, Evan, and see what actually happened.
I had faith that the 71 was going to be able to hang on to it. He sat on the apron, but you could tell that the truck was still unsettled after he pushed up a little bit and got into Piscini. Great save on behalf of the 1, and a 71 still trying to make that corner basically on the flat. Just began to lose the back end and might have spun out all it was lonesome, but the 88 elected that the inside was going to be the place that he went to avoid the accident. Kruska clipped him, and it sent the 71 back up the hill, and he just barely got into the 1, and that's how Piscini ended up getting taken out in this thing. The driver that me and you first saw when that 1 snapped back up the hill that he had collected was, I believe, the number 22, who might have gone in the back end, but really Piscini, one of the only drivers to get a lot of damage in that one, and then well behind the accident, also torn up Jack Price, the driver who really all of this originated around. So the 2 drivers who got together first are the 2 drivers who meet the wall. Oftentimes at Talladega, justice isn't often served that way, but thankfully not too many cars in and around that one that weren't a part of it got a lot of damage.
Yep, not too many cars that got a lot of damage, but Piscini is one of the Friday night regulars in this deal. So one of the guys with the most experience in this race now, for most intents and purposes, out of contention for the victory. And then there were 3, Jorgensen, Wofford, and Cheburko. So that, I think, in some ways might be a plus for the rest of this field that doesn't have the same experience on Friday nights, because they won't have to deal with as many really talented drivers. But still going to be a challenge, I think, for everybody, because from here on out, I think we're pack racing. Everybody can make it to the end on fuel. Nobody has any excuse to pit, though they are trying to conserve fuel a little bit. You see some of these drivers here on the apron, I presume clutching and coasting, but just you're going to have to find a way to navigate this racing for the rest of the night, because it's only going to get crazier from here.
That incident also takes a little bit of the question, I think, out of the can we make it on fuel game, because if it was going to be tight before, anybody who would have been anywhere remotely close to not being able to make it on fuel would have and should have pitted by this point. Pit lane has been open for 2 cycles around Talladega, so I think it's safe to say that we should be able to go to the end on fuel. Not that that doesn't necessarily guarantee we won't see drivers back down pit road. Obviously, if you get caught up in an accident, you're going to come down to the pit lane, try to get some things fixed up, but also not that tires are a huge deal at Talladega, and we've made note of the weather conditions, and some people have questioned, but no, we promise no rain delay coverage is going to be needed despite how dark it appears to be here tonight in Lincoln, Alabama, that people may decide to come down if we get a caution in 15 or 20 laps or so to come down just to get tires. With only 12 or 13 drivers on the lead pack at that point, it wouldn't necessarily be a radical idea to give up, 3-4 spots if you're towards the back to get some fresh tires. I think you still have plenty of room to work with to be able to try to get around there. But again, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, we're at lap 58, and drivers up front appear to be confident at this point, if there was any doubt, that fuel should be good to the end.
That tires point is an interesting one, and I think we might see a few guys, few drivers at the back here. Gavin Jones, I think, is the most notable. He's got the cleanest car of the few that are coming down pit road. Also see Hayden Harville and Andrew Cardinale making their way down for service. But Jones is the one who I think is electing for the tires, as you just said, Evan. So, again, you're right. It's not really a big factor at Talladega, especially when you compare it to the likes of the 1.5 miles and the short tracks and that sort of thing. But it's certainly something that we need to keep our eye on because it still can make a difference if you're in the right position at the right time.
So we missed it when that caution flag came out. Well, we have an opportunity when these guys ride around. Let's take a look top to bottom at a little bit of an impromptu and somewhat delayed iRacing Midway Race Break, but we'll get you caught up on where everybody is running. This look top to bottom is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service. iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. And in the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is your one-stop shop for all things online racing, with official sanctioned series by the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, and more. As we pace at lap number 59, Mark Jorgensen Jr. is your race leader. He's been working rather closely with Rodney Wofford, who runs in second. They swapped to inverted to where they run right now. Jorgensen started second. He leads, and your pole sitter Wofford right now runs in P2. Cody Eldred is somebody who's been trying to work his way into that 4-car pack up front. He's done a good job right now. The driver who started in 9th and made up a lot of those spots in the opening 15 laps is up to 3rd, the best spot that he has been in all night long. He'll be joined on row number 2 for the upcoming restart by Brandon Chapurko, who started 3rd, runs in 4th at the moment. Joey Lamb alongside him in the number 5 spot. Hoyt Smith is our biggest mover, started all the way at the back in 19th spot. He runs in 6th on the racetrack. Should note he was P1 in practice earlier tonight and may have something up the sleeve going forward. We've got Brock Drury, who runs in a number 7 position, exactly where he started. Nicholas Schmig still hanging out just inside of the top 10. He runs in the number 8 position with William Kruska in 9th, and Cole Palmer rounds out our top 10.
11th is where you find Chris Passini, who looks like he's used his quick fix and managed to get that done and dusted down to the way, so he's got a good 1 car to go the rest of the way. Jack Price in the 71 runs in the 12th position. Gary Weaver is the last car on the lead lap in 13th. And then Andrew Cardinale runs 14th, 1 lap down, as do Gavin Jones and David Powers, currently 15th and 16th. 2 laps down is the 30 of Blake Heither in 17th. Hayden Harville, 5 laps down in 18th. And then Mark Vega, disconnected already, 23 laps down, out of the race in the 19th position.
That's a look top to bottom at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com and sign up today for the rest of 2017. If you're doing so, make sure to go to iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. You can take advantage of some exclusive promo codes. If you just want to kind of stick your toes in the water and give iRacing a chance, you can get a 3-month iRacing membership for less than $5. Or if you're ready to go you can get a 1-month iRacing membership for over 50% off the sticker price. Again, those promo codes are going to be available from now until the 2018 calendar year on December the 31st. They're no longer going to work for you. But again, if you are considering signing up for a first-time membership, no reason not to go to iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. On that note, 60 laps complete, just a little bit shy of the 2/3 marker in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250, and we take a green flag with 34 laps to go, and it's the 8 on the inside. Good jump by Jorgensen as he leads to quarter one.
Solid jump by Jorgensen. Wofford right there, too. Everybody's still 2 by 2, so I think they might be going for it now. Nobody really dropping to the bottom. Eldred is there alongside Traberko, and then you've got Lamb, and then Hoyt Smith drops down to the bottom, as does Brock Drury, as does Bill Kruska. They're all there, and then you have to go back to Nicholas Schmid to make things happen on the outside again. Pacini's there as well in the back with that car repaired after the wreck. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Rodney Wofford has managed to jump around Mark Jorgensen from the outside with a little bit of help from Brandon Chaburko. So move the 3 truck to the point.
And a little bit of a aggressive move to the inside. The 14 of Eldred not giving him any welcome home presence all over the back of that number 3 Chevrolet. In fact, a bit friendly with the left or quarter panel, which can tend to be a problem maker at places like Talladega, and not even getting the lap led is Wofford. He comes across the line 200s behind Jorgensen, who, despite being muscled out of the inside lane of the racetrack, still got the lap led that time by courtesy of the outside. So you're looking at the guys up front and you're wondering, well, we're missing somebody. Well, that's Chris Pacini, involved in the accident back in quarters 1 and 2 that brought out the caution flag in this race. He's got some damage on that Pennzoil Chevrolet, but the car looks pretty good considering all what it's gone through. Maybe came down to the pit lane and got that thing quick repaired. He is trying to work his way back up through the field. He's in 11th. Doesn't look like he's that far back, though. You can see that bright yellow Chevy coming to the outside, looking for maybe P8 this time by, trying to get himself right back into the conversation.
Jumping right back up there with his buddies, Brandon Chaburko and Mark Jorgensen, or at least contemporaries in the Friday night racing you normally see here on LSRTV. Those 3 know each other very well from those events and are now trying to jump back up on the high side and work together. You see Pacini kind of thought and stuck between 2 minds, thought about jumping behind Bill Kruska, but has made it up to the outside lane behind Chaburkos, and now those 3 will try and push and work together, but it is still Wofford and Eldred up front with help from Joey Lamb, who currently sits in 4th, and then trouble right in front of them. I don't quite know how that started, but 3, 4, 5 trucks involved here at the beginning. I imagine that all started when, yes, there was a push from Cody Eldred. He got into the rear of Rodney Wofford, turned him sideways a little bit, and then it just all started from there.
And a caution does come from the tower. It was almost like a parachute. Came out of the back of the 3 Watford, got loosened up, and that truck just dropped straight back in the middle. And the fantastic thing about that is nobody technically spun out. Everybody kept going straight. There was a lot of trucks, though, that got damage in that. Obviously, the 3, but you've got the 14, the 8, you've got the 81, the 9, and company. So at least 4 or 5 trucks going to get at least some of the sheet metal shredded and all of that. But the caution flag didn't come out because nobody technically spun out. But the caution does come from the tower for that incident and going to give these guys an opportunity to catch their breath.
I think Joey Lamb definitely got the worst of it. Thank goodness for the quick fixes, but really just had nowhere to go with that 81 truck. Just kind of got stuck from Eldred, who was in front of him, and then behind him there was someone and just kind of got pinballed there, and that 81's all torn up, so we'll see him down pit road momentarily. I think that's almost a guarantee.
Well, the point that I was cautious about making when we discussed, hey, we're going to be good on fuel, is that when you get a caution, odds are that we're not going to get another 42 laps or so of green flag racing after we got the first 52 green, because well, this is what happens. And we got to go so long in green because the guys up front pulled away. There was a little bit less of a sense of urgency. People were taking it a little bit easier. You have to realistically expect that inside of 30 laps to go in this race that you might have to deal with a lot of these short runs to the end. Guys who come down to the pit lane and get some of the damage fixed up now aren't going to have that quick repair in the back pocket, and now you get junked, you're out of this thing. And we're at that point in the race where, 2/3 have gone, inside of 30 to go. I normally like to set my marker closer to 20, but based on how aggressive these guys have been, and I think partly that is, I think they saw Piscini coming up to the pack pike, and they're thinking, okay, if he gets hooked up with Chaburko again, and those four occupy the inside and the outside, we can't do anything. So they're trying to be really aggressive, get in front of them while they can, and it leads to situations like this that we might be having a lot of restart practice from this point on to the end.
Potentially, that's, I think, a line of thinking that you could presume to be true. But another thing I'm noticing here, Gavin Jones came down and got tires in the last pit stop, got his lap back on this as a result of the caution. So now he's right back in the game with fresher tires than anybody else. So again, doesn't make that much of a difference, but boy, does that really work out well for the 12 machine. He'll be back up there right in the lead pack with everybody. That being said, looks like we've got a lot of clean cars at the front of this field for the most part. I know there are a few drivers that have used the quick fix in places. You get one on the evening, and a lot of them, I think most notably Chris Piscini has already used his. Obviously, Joey Lamb has used his as a result of that last wreck. But for the most part, everybody's in good shape. I think if you're the likes of Jorgensen and Chaburko, you've still got your quick fix in case something happens. So you're in really, really good shape if you still have that. But for those who have already used it, you have to be a little bit more careful, because if you wreck again and you end up with damage again, there's no coming back from it. You just end up with a damaged car and a car that just won't perform as well in the draft or elsewhere for the rest of the race.
Drivers laps down include Andrew Cardinale, who was, I think, the first driver to lose his lead lap status earlier on in this race. David Powers is also one lap down. Those are the only drivers off for the lead lap that I can see getting back into this thing. We've got Blake Heather, who's 8 laps down, and even if he decided to get out from behind the pit wall and jump behind the wheel, I don't think he would be able to make up those 8 laps, so his night, all intended purposes, are done. Same with Hayden Harville. That car, though, much like Heather, still on the pit lane, just nobody driving it. Mark Vega is the only driver to this point who is officially out of this race. He has retired that car for the rest of the evening. But pit strategy question has gone out of the window in about the last 20 minutes or so. The complexion of this race is very changed. It was very different at lap 52 than it is right now at lap number 66. And I think that green flag races benefit some more than others. I think that in either case, though, it's hard to beat the guys up front, the Jorgensens and the Chaburkos and company. But I like what I'm seeing out of the group behind him. You got Smith, Schmieg, Palmer, Weaver, Price. All of those drivers started outside of the top 10. They started 19th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 13th, respectively. Now they run 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They made up a lot of positions. Some of it had to do with a little bit of luck, and hey, at a plate track pike that never hurt anybody now and again. When that caution flag came out, was able to cycle themselves back up through to the front of this thing. They're in a fantastic position as they run right now. If they all work together to do something about those 2 names in front of them. But the question is, will they work together? They all have a common interest, and that is getting the 8 and 21 off of the front row, because they feel like they've seen enough of that tonight. Can you communicate that as a group and do it? That's the question.
That's the really, really tricky thing, and there are ways to do that in sim, and if any of these drivers happen to be on TeamSpeak together, maybe they can talk about it there as well. But I think you have to try something, because you know that Jorgensen and Chaburko are going to work together, because they have been working together all night long. And if Fassini can get back up there and Walford can get back up there, then you've got your fearsome foursome that controlled the race, especially after that first round of pit stops under green. And I think that's the last thing that the rest of this field wants to see. So you've got to try something. You have to find your way around and work together enough to get up to the front of the field and beat them. But then once you're up there and you know they're not a factor, that's when, I guess, co-opetition breaks down and it's every man for himself.
Yeah, that's kind of the funny thing, is you don't want to work too good together or too closely, because, again, at the end of the day, you're trying to put the other guy behind you. The payouts are for the guys up front. You want to win the race. There are no points in these special events that these guys put on. And, at the end of the day, when you talk about all of that, well, you got to end up in front. One of the drivers that's in a unique position, to give us a little bit of insight about that, is the driver of the number 92 machine, Pike. I think you got him on the radio.
Yeah, we've got Hoyt Smith here in that Coastal Carolina University Chevy Silverado on the radio with us. And Hoyt, you've been in the center of a lot of action tonight. What has it been like out there so far from your perspective, and what do you think we can see here in this final stint?
Yeah, it seems like every wreck I've been very close to it or actually in it. I think if I keep the front of the truck clean, I have a good shot at it. It seems 8 and 21 may be working together. I'm not sure. If I can split them up, I'm going to do my best to here. I got a teammate, the 22, that's going to be coming strong to help me to get up here possibly.
So then that would kind of be the idea, I guess, to get together with Mr. Cardinale and try and work together and maybe pick up a few other drivers in this field as well, just to try and break the stranglehold that the 8 and the 21 have had on this?
Yeah. Also, the 24 worked very well with me in practice, too. I think we set top speed in practice, but that don't count for the race. We just want to keep the front clean and maybe throw some fireworks there at the end.
Well, we'll let you get back.
The team's going to retire this truck after this race. We don't need it for the next one.
Easy way to do it. Well, we'll get you to get back set up for the green. Before you go, though, want a chance to explain what a Chanticleer is to everybody?
It's a big old bird.
A big old bird indeed. Thanks for the time, Hoyt, and we'll see you after the race.
Thank you.
A rooster, technically, Mr. Pasoko. It's one that not a lot of people know about, but a lot of pride for the 2016 Division I baseball champions, obviously, with Hoyt. So he'll be trying to get the Chanticleers to victory lane here tonight with a little bit of help from Andrew Cardinale.
And the truck's still looking good, so you can see it not only on the deck lid, but also on the side of the truck. I have a feeling they put it on that big flatbed in case some of the sheet metal on the side gets torn up. It's pretty hard to tear up that big flat part on the back deck of those trucks. It is Talladega, so I think stranger things have happened, but the 92, it's a good-looking truck. It's in a good-looking spot. Started 19th. He is the biggest mover as well up to this point in the contest. He started all the way at the back, so up in third. You would imagine that he's had quite the scenic night, and you were talking earlier on in this stint about trying to avoid the middle. Well, he had to go back to front, and he went through the middle at some point in this race, and well, that tends to explain why he's found himself near a lot of the action. He hopes that he's in a photo finish and not anything else bad from this point on to the end, but as the pace car ducks off and away, we do the dance once more from Talladega. Pace car down, going to complete 68 laps of contest here tonight and take a restart with 26 to go, and a PTSD awareness 250. Another good jump for Jorgensen, clean on the inside.
Really good jump, and he goes straight up to the top side. And it's Will Smith coming down to the bottom, trying to bring that 92 to the front of the field. Gets a really, really good run, but not a lot of help from either of Jorgensen or Chaburko. First help will be Nicholas Schmid, who's trying to come up on the inside and get a run. Just going to have to sit behind here. Jorgensen's going to get a really good push from Chaburko. So Jorgensen should lead when we get to 3.
Well, they made the move to the outside, and it opens up the inside. So that's what the 92 shooting for. The 8 saw it, came down, shut the door, and Hoyt trying to loosen it up a little bit there on the left rear quarter panel. But inside, good by 2 car lengths now. In fact, are they going to be able to successfully split up the 8 and the 21? That could be big for either of them. Does Smith go to the outside? He thought about it. Now the 8 goes topside. And here goes Hoyt Smith challenging for the race lead.
Jorgensen all he could handle in the tri-oval, and I think Jorgensen just said, I don't know if I want to race like that just yet. Hoyt Smith certainly wants to. He's got a lot of help here, and we've got a third lane coming up top with Rodney Walford and Chris Bassini. So there's 2 of the 4 Friday night drivers here. They're trying to work together along with their friends at the top side. Then you've got Hoyt Smith and Nicholas Schmid trying to work together on the bottom.
And that third lane is coming. We've seen a little bit of teasing on that third lane tonight, but we haven't seen anybody ride it through to fruition. Does the 3 and the 1 decide to go down into that middle lane? There's quite the gap between Chaburko and the 07, and it looks like they'll duck it at the moment, but now you're looking at getting the band back together again as they move up into what's going to be about the 5th and 7th running positions on the racetrack. So Smith is in position. He's got Schmid on his bumper. Those are 2 drivers who have been inside of the top 6 or 7 for a good portion of this night ever since we saw pit stop cycle through. This is, I think, the best spot they have been in all night long, but it's 2 on the inside versus a line of 4 on the outside, and they really got to push. Normally it's the guys on the top who bump draft and side draft the guys on the bottom. Look at the 92 and a 99, that time down the back, side drafting the guys on top of them, moving up the racetrack, trying to take some air off of the 8 and the 21.
I think especially Smith has really seen what the 8 and the 21 and the 3 and the 1 truck have done together in terms of racing really close and bump drafting really tightly, and is beginning to take notes and start running that same way himself. He's getting a lot of help from Schmidt. He's gotten a lot closer to the rear bumper of the 92 than I see just about anybody as Jorgensen drops to the bottom, so he'll have control of that front lane once more. And now Hoyt Smith is going to give him his bump and send him right back up to the top side, but they're really starting to press at the front of the field now, especially those drivers who don't normally run on Friday nights.
14 drivers on the lead lap, and about 13 of them scored within 9/10 of a second of your race leaders at the moment. The 24 are going to join the fight on the inside, so we can add Cole Palmer to the fight amongst the 92 and the 99, and contact now for second. Door slamming is Brandon Chaburko and Hoyt Smith. All of this with the intention of keeping Mark Jorgensen just that little bit in front at a 92 and a 99, and those guys on the outside are doing so good pushing that despite the valiant effort of the 99, so far it hasn't been enough to get around him. Looks like Jorgensen fixing to get a good run off of the bank of this time at a 4, gonna lead another lap.
Oh, are they side draft? Are they ever side drafting? Chaburko and Smith make contact once again. Not the first time that's happened, and there are donuts now on both the 92 and the 21, and Smith is going to try and side draft Jorgensen to go get the race lead back with help from Schmieg behind him, and then the 24 of Cole Palmer, who's got that busted up nose, as we noted earlier, but is still making a difference down at the bottom, trying to make things happen and get Hoyt Smith in front.
More drivers entering the picture. Insert the 88 of William Kruska. He's got friends behind, but Jorgensen steps down in front of the 92, and now he is in a position to kind of dictate the pace of the guys on the inside. He can't necessarily run up front and let off for the gas. The 92 won't let him. A big shot there, but now the 92 back in a position that we were talking about earlier in this race, where those drivers get boxed in. And with a big run on the outside, about the same amount of run that they had been getting. If you swap the 8 with the 92, nothing looks different when you swap out those cars. But the 92 now no longer has that clean air, and it can't go anywhere. And if the 21 is to drop down or the 3 is to drop down, we would then have 2 on the inside, 2 on the outside of those Super Speedway Cup guys. And that would put us right back where we were at about lap 3. Nothing changed through a course of about 70 laps, and those guys would be back to square one trying to figure them out.
In which case you have two strategies. Either you just run right up the rear bumper and try and shake those drivers in front of you, get them loose and move them up to the high side, or you lay off, come up to the outside and make your run back on the outside of this pack of cars. So one of the two is, I think, going to have to be your play here at some point. The question is when, because we're getting down to it. Only 19 laps to go.
Yeah, running out of time in this thing, and you have to think if we get a caution now, those 4 or 5 laps that it eats out of this thing's a good quarter of what's left, so you can't really hang back and try to strategize. We've been talking about figuring these guys out, trying to find how to get around them. There's no more time for strategizing. You see a hole, you got to go for it. You see a bumper, you got to push it, and you just got to hope that, hey, it works out for you in the end. The 92 did a good job that time of breaking up the 3 and the 8, but we're still in that position where he's behind Wofford, and again, it severely limits his options. I'm not sure how desperate Kruska in the 88 and Price in the 71 are. And the 3's going to get turned!
Big trouble. He got some help from Hoyt Smith and got sent around both the front end of the 92, and then they just all tore it up behind him. A whole host of cars involved. The 71 got involved in it. The 24 got collected in it. I think Passini got caught up again and went way up in the air, so that'll be his night done for the most part. Just a lot of cars wrecking here on lap 76.
Well, I was going to say the guys back there in the outside lane of the racetrack might be strategizing on maybe going to a third lane, but we've said many a time that 92 wasn't going to be backing off of the 3 and just got a little bit offline with each other. That 3 got hooked around, and Well, that wasn't necessarily the textbook way of doing it. There goes the one at Piscini. There goes the 3 at Wofford. Big accident down the back straightaway. That one machine was way up in the air. Then Piscini got stuck up there. That's an understatement. Caught in the catch fence down the back straightaway. He'll have to take the quick tow back to the pit lane. That's going to cost him at least 1 lap. And, well, that completely changes everything with a caution inside of 20 to go.
He'll need another yellow to make it happen. He'll need another chance to get back here on the lead lap and make things happen. I don't know if he'll get it. We'll see. And we'll see who comes down pit road to get tires and service and fuel and all that sort of thing this late in the going, because we know it could help in places. But what sort of strategy variance do we pull here, and who decides to come down pit road? Not really any takers at the moment. Thought that Kruska might drop down there, but for the most part, they all stay up outside of things, and looks like the only drivers coming down pit road are the ones who got caught up in that wreck. So I think for the most part, everybody wants the track position. That's the key at this point as we get down to it.
And we had kind of speculated if we were going to see anybody come down at the pit lane or not, and obviously the drivers down at this point are solely going to be those who have to come down and get some damage repaired. And after that one, the number's a lot higher than it had been up until this point in this race. But it's been a while since I've seen a truck go way up like that one. Machine of Chris Piscini did a shower of sparks down the back straightaway as he rode along that catch fencing. And the point that I had made about 2 laps prior to when that happened is this takes a good chunk out of this race now. With the caution flag cycles now taken towards 5 laps, we're not going to get green inside of 15 laps to go. Caution at that point would bring us inside of 10 laps to go, so you really start to run out of options, and you never like to see guys get taken out, and it's very unjust, I think, for Watford and Piscini's night to end that way. I know how, we're talking about it's kind of them and their friends, those 4 versus the World Pike, not to make them out as bad guys at all or anything. They're just better strategizing than the other drivers out on the racetrack. If you're not one of those 4 trucks that we've been talking about for the bulk of the night, who we see regularly here on this Friday night time slot, that wreck kind of had to have been a good thing for you, though, I hate to say.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it in that sense, that you don't have as many of the Friday night drivers at the front of the field to deal with, and that would tilt the odds in favor of the likes of Hoyt Smith and Nicholas Schmieg and the non-regulars on Friday nights here on LSRTV. But you never know. There's so much that could go on these plate tracks, and so many things that we don't necessarily expect happen, and so many things that we don't predict happen that end up happening. So
I follow.
You just kind of have to wait and see, and just to some degree pray and hope, because you try and control a little bit, but the way pack racing works, this race will never be entirely in your control. You are to some degree reliant on what happens with the other drivers around you.
Going to have 11 drivers on the lead lap as of that time around. Jack Price is getting away by David Powers. Also just got himself back onto the lead lap and in his iRacing Chevrolet Silverado. So looks like there's a good chance that all 11 of those trucks can be competitive for this restart. We don't really have anybody out there limping around with a badly damaged truck. If it's damaged that badly, you would have come down to this point and gotten a quick fix. And I think that these wrecks have not been glancing blows. If you don't have a quick fix and you're in an accident, that truck's not going to be limping around the racetrack for much longer. It's going to be on the flatbed and headed home. So you're going to be making your way up to the spotter stand to get a good view of how this thing is going to shake out. But we pace at lap number 79. Again, drivers have not been down pit road, the leaders at least, those who have not been involved in accidents since after that first caution flag we saw, which came, I guess trucks really weren't down pit road until about lap 55 or so, but that was enough fuel to get these guys to the end of this race, and they have stayed out since then. Hoyt Smith, somebody who really took advantage of that. I've, name dropped Schmieg and Kruska and Weaver. How about Gavin Jones as well? Haven't talked all that much about the 12. He's in a good position. Gary Weaver, 07 machine, he's in a fantastic spot. He's picked up 10 positions, and he'll be restarting this one coming up to the inside of row number 4. So there's all those names, and the 8 and the 21 are going to have to make a decision now. Do you get bumper to bumper and controlled the inside or the outside, because when they push, they can hustle. They were hauling the mail up on that outside lane. Smith and company were giving everything they had on the inside, the shorter way around, and still couldn't get around the guys at the top who were hooked up. So do you go top or bottom and hook up, or do you send one driver to the inside, one driver to the outside, and try to maintain the flow of both lanes? Either way, there's going to be an opening. There is no indefensible hole in your firewall now, because only 2 drivers. It's going to be a lot more difficult to hold back the 9 that are behind you. So I'm looking forward to this one. And I think it might even come from somebody like a Kruska. I keep looking back at him. I'm hoping that someone's going to break open that 3rd lane. It's yet to happen. That's always an option as well.
The 3rd lane is an option, and I think the other question that we have to ask is, who do the rest of these drivers decide to rally around, or do they try and rally around someone? Hoyt Smith is really the first driver outside of that foursome that we've really seen have some speed, so there's a chance that he may end up being the one that want to rally around, or they look at him and they say he's too much of a threat as well, and we jump and we go help somebody else. So just have to watch and see how this plays out, but it's going to be interesting to see how the strategy pans out here in the final 15 laps.
And you would think for all the super speedway action that we cover, we'd have more adjectives and better ways to describe this thing than interesting. But that's the beauty of plate track racing, is that you never know what's going to happen. And these things tend to come down to photo finishes. I'm talking finishes at less than 1/10,000th of a second, to the point where it'll show up on the iRacing scoring as a tie. And in order to help us break that down for you, if it happens, I want to give a shout out to Joel. Real timing coverage of tonight's PTSD Awareness 250 is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. You can get it today at joel-real-timing.com. A couple of different options. You can go on there and get a basic download, or you can go pro and get the full-fledged version today. Whether you spend your time on the sim, behind the wheel, on top of the flag stand, or from the spotter stand at joelrealtiming.com. Here we go, 14 laps to go, and Jorgensen is off and away. Another good jump, 21, immediately behind him, so they decide to take the inside to 1 and 2.
So the answer was go block Hoyt Smith and get him buried back in traffic, so he doesn't have the ability to make that happen and make anything happen from the bottom lane. So Smith, I guess, will have to go up top if he wants to make something happen, and it looks like he's looking up there, trying to get Schmeek, who's been working with the 92 since at least that last little green flag run we had. Those two got hooked up pretty well together, so have to watch and see what they do. In the meantime, though, they're all just going to run single file, but they can't do that for forever, because then you just give the race to Jorgensen and Chaburko. So who makes it? What did they make it happen? Oh, well, there's an answer. Chaburko goes around, no yellow flag, no damage on the 21. So now it's just Jorgensen out there in the front of the field.
So there were 4 drivers that everybody had a target on. 3 of them are gone in the last 7 laps of this race. Here we go, 3 wide for the race lead. Jorgensen works the bottom. Smith in the middle, and the driver trying out the outside was Gavin Jones. Thinks better of it. He comes down to the inside. They are going to be all over that number 8 Chevrolet. Down the back straightaway they go. Look for the outside.
Here comes Hoyt Smith in the 92, now getting a run on Jorgensen, trying to make things happen. Meanwhile, you've got all sorts of cars lining up behind him, so they are rallying around the 92 because they know he's got speed. Gavin Jones, who we talked about earlier, came down, was a lap down some 20 laps ago, and is now fighting up there in the 6th position. You've got Bill Kruska down there. You've got Gary Weaver in line up on the top side. You've got Andrew Cardinale, who had a pretty beat-up truck earlier, but, he's still there, and he's a teammate to Hoyt Smith, so he may get involved in this later. Everybody's starting to their way up towards the front of the field as we get down to the end of this.
3 on the inside and 2 on the outside. The 99 not doing his fellow counterparts much help on the outside of the racetrack. Again, though, I don't really think we can count Jorgensen any different than any other truck at this point, because now the 8's just as inclined to work with the 99 as the 99 would be inclined to work with him. And that 92, who appeared to be in the best position this time 1 lap ago, now begins to fall for the outside lane without some support. The inside going to have an advantage, 3.5 car lengths to the triangle. There goes the 88 of Kruska. Tries to go to the outside. 92 reluctant, but does go to the back bumper. They fan out across the start-finish line. Someone 3 wide, and there they go. The 14 and the 12 into the fence. Caution flying is back out.
So let's see how this all started. I saw the 14 there of Cody Eldred, I think kind of just end up in a really bad spot because I think the 12, yeah, I think he came up into him as he was trying to avoid the 99, and then that just kind of collected them all in one piece, and out go the 14, out goes the 12, who we had just talked about a little bit ago, but bad luck for both of them, and they might be out of contention for this one at the end of the night.
And that's what happens when you get staggered. Because I don't think at that point we were technically 3 wide. Because the 14, if you move the 14, 7 feet to the right, he would line up perfectly with the back bumper of the 92. So that's probably what the 12's seeing. His spotter in the sim is probably telling him you're 2 wide, and they technically were. The 14 just stepped down a lane, and 12 moves up a bit, 14 moves down a bit. That's why I said we weren't really 3 wide. And at that point, it just gets so difficult to gauge where you are. And if you don't have a live spotter on top of the spotter stand, using Joel real timing, I might add, if you're only going off of that MSIM spotter, it's not going to know the difference between somebody running bumper to bumper and somebody running at the same distance from each other, just 10 feet to the left of one another. And that staggering is what is so difficult about judging where somebody is at a plate track. A racing deal. That was a crazy lap leading up to it. It all started a handful of laps before when Chaburko got sent out of line, but that was really crazy. I'm not sure they would have made that last for those 11 laps.
The easiest thing we can say here is that when it comes to spotters here and the differences between real human spotters and the sim spotter, especially at plate tracks and situations like that, there ain't nothing like the real thing. You got to make sure you have a human one if you can, because they're the ones that can really see that sort of thing and tell you, here comes a driver, don't move up there, because then you're going to end up into the wall. That's exactly what happened to Gavin Jones and company there. So really, really tricky thing to avoid, but just hard. Sim's only so powerful. We're not quite at the point where, we can have Watson spotting for everybody here. So.
So William Kruska is going to assume the race lead in all of this. Mark Jorgensen Jr. not involved in that accident, despite, what you might think with some of the bad luck the Super Speedway Cup guys have had. What this does mean, James, is we have our first-time new race leader here tonight as Kruska gets to the point, not via that third lane that I was keeping an eye on, but he does get to the point. And how about we go on the radio, catch up with your race leader with 8 to go.
Well, hey, how's it going, guys?
Bill, you've managed to avoid the chaos and now find yourself here at the front of the field. Is there any sort of plan at this point to try and stay up there, or are you just going to try and wing it as best you can because you have no idea what's going to happen?
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to try to wing it. I've always had bad luck, it seems like, with these kind of events, so it'd be nice to win one of these, especially in this truck. I always like this truck. It's my favorite.
I was going to say, go ahead and talk about the significance of this truck. You've got the race sponsor on the hood of that 88 machine, so I know there's a good story behind it and one that I think you'd like to tell.
Yeah, this truck is Drive for Suicide Prevention. It's my, pretty much company. I host monthly events. Pretty much with this, we do monthly events with like awarenesses and stuff, and it all leads up to the big race in September for the Suicide Prevention 250, and then before that, I'm hoping Sunday before that week, it'll be the showdown presented by Pulse Autosport.
I know a big deal for you and everybody behind the PTSD team. So we'll go ahead and let you get back to it and get prepared for this restart. I know you have a little bit of time, but don't want to tie you up from trying to set up something here for the final few laps. But thanks for the time, Bill, and hopefully we'll be talking to you in a little bit.
All right, thank you.
So, Bill Kruska leading the race here now with just 8 laps to go in this race. Getting down to it there, Mr. Pasoko. Not a lot of time left, and maybe only one more yellow left in this because we're getting close to that 5 to go marker and point of no return, as you like to refer it, pretty quickly here.
Yeah, we're closing in. I'm just going to throw this out there. You were way too nice on him because I would have made him call his shot. I would have said, you win in this race or not? And if he said no, I would have tossed him out. But he's got Schmieg behind him. Schmieg, somebody who's been up there. We briefly talked about qualifying. Seems like a while ago. I guess it was to an extent, and how important that is in these races. Out of the drivers who start inside of the top 10 for this restart, only 3 of them started inside of the top 10 at the beginning of the race. I think the average starting position for drivers restarting in the top 7 for this one, their qualifying average is probably closer to 13th position or so. So that just really tells you how these races change. Completely different race at lap number 52. The dominant trucks are out of this thing, and that is, to an extent, what people hate about these tracks, and to an extent, that's why people love to play tracks. You can have drivers be so good, and in this case, by no fault of their own, just get caught up in accidents. And that's happened to Ronnie Wofford, to Chris Passini, to Brandon Chaburko. Chaburko's not going to give up, by the way. He's 9th, still on the lead lap. I would not be at all surprised if the 21 gets up into this thing. But, this is a chance for a guy like a Kruska to come through and net this thing. And it's the beauty of this kind of a racetrack. And as I noted earlier, it's kind of on the flip side why some people hate coming to these. Let's say this: you love it when you're on the good end of it, and you hate it when you're on the bad side of it.
That sounds about accurate, I think. Maybe a little bit there, give and take. That's not totally true, but for the most part, you just kind of end up playing it as it goes and praying that you're not at the mercy of Talladega, in a sense. I think that's the best way to put it. But lights are off on the pace car, so the restart will come on lap 89. 7 laps to go now. 6 when we get the restart. Gonna be a fun one.
And that point of no return, as you alluded to, is inside of 5 laps to go or less. We touched on it earlier when we were talking about fuel strategy, that there is no chance this race ends at lap number 93, and it's not going to end at lap number 95. We go 94 laps, no more, no less, 250 miles. We're not going to discount you on anything. You don't get any free action on top of that. So if a caution is to come out inside of the final 5 laps of this race, we're not going to have time to go through a full caution flag cycle, open up the pit lane, allow drivers to come down pit road for stops, get back out there, double them up, and send them again. The more conservative number is 4, but it appears that we've been getting that extra caution lap on these caution flag cycles tonight. But for the sake of being safe, I'll say 4 laps to go. If a caution comes out with 4 laps to go or less, this race ends at the moment of caution. Whoever is in front at the moment of yellow takes home the checkered flag. So with that being said, you're not going to wait until turn 4 on the last lap to make a move. That used to be the age-old question. Do you want to be pushing? Do you want to be being pushed? Coming at a turn 4 on the last lap, would you rather be on the defensive or the offensive? There is, not to discount what these guys are going to go through, James, but there's not a lot of thinking that goes on and what happens next.
Not a lot of thinking. The thing I'll be watching for is whether or not they stay 2x2 or if they all duck down single file like we've seen in recent cup races and they just try and ride it out. That's the big question. If you ride it out and you're stuck in the back of the field, you're almost totally out of luck. You're hoping that this goes side by side all the way to the end.
The pace car's down to the wait for what could be the final time tonight. Coming to take the green flag, William Kruska. Green flag flies, 88 laps down and only 6 to go. But again on the outside, a better jump for Mark Jorgensen Jr. He'll take the lead to 1 and 2.
Jorgensen out there now gets to the bottom, and guess who? Hoyt Smith there up top trying to side draft the 88 and make things happen. Schmieg right behind him as he's been for a good chunk of the second half of this race. Now to the outside, tried to go Cole Palmer, but he didn't really get that much help. But here comes Brandon Chaburko. Thought better of it, though. Ducked down to the inside. So looks like he's going to get down to the inside and, yes, go help Palmer. He's got nowhere to go, so he's just going to push the 24 and try and make things happen. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, they've really jumped out far ahead of Hoyt Smith. It's Kruska that's now clear, and now Gary Weaver is trying to find a way around the 92 just to make it 3 cars on the bottom.
And a block to the inside. There goes the 88 of Kruska. Below the yellow line, but it looked like he might have got forced below the yellow line. Look at the 92 trying to split the gap. That's not going to work. We are 3 wide for the race lead at lap number 90. All the way up on the outside, it's Nicholas Schmieg to the race lead. What a push, courtesy of the 24 of Palmer.
I don't think those guys up at the front of the field noticed that the 99 was coming, and they were too busy racing each other down in the first 2 lanes that Schmieg was able to hold it flat-footed all the way to the front of the field and get up there. So now he goes to the bottom. He's in control of this race with help from Bill Kruska and Gary Weaver of all people. Chaburko trying to work with Hoyt Smith and get back to the front. Jorgensen now slipping back after controlling a good chunk of the second half of this race.
And a lot of blocking going on. 99 trying to run the 88 up the hill. Look for the 07 machine. Thought Weaver might have been able to sneak his way into that inside line as the 99's attention was focused elsewhere. We'll go 3 wide for the race lead once again. This time it's Jorgensen all the way up, and there they go. 21 going to get turned. Swing involved. Big wreck at lap number 91.
And that should just about do it for this race. That all started. Hoyt Smith tried to get in between, almost got to Schmieg's side quarter panel there, but didn't quite. But he got in between Chaburko and Schmieg, and that just kind of sent everybody around, and that's it. That's over. And I believe Bill Kruska is going to win this race.
It would have been a godsend if they were able to keep that up for another 3 laps, but I don't think they got the memo that it was 3 laps until that point of no return. I think somebody told him it was 3 laps to go. They just let after it, and I'll tell you, that is why I love these trucks. 3 wide, 4 wide at times, and when you're not working with somebody or you don't have, 2 or 3 drivers trying to work together to hold each other off, and it's every man for himself like that, these trucks can do masterful things, and that had to be probably the most intense 3 or 4 laps I've seen in a good time.
The only shame here is that we're not going to be able to see it race green all the way to the end, working lap 92 now. So technically 3 laps to go, but Kruska's got to go pick up the pace car. So that's half a lap. And then you have to have at least 1 lap for everybody to pit on the lead lap. And then your lap cars get the next lap to pit, and we won't have time. So all Kruska has to do is make it around behind the pace car, and he's going to win tonight at Talladega.
And that wreck was very similar to what we saw earlier when we weren't quite 2 wide, and we weren't quite 3 wide, but we were 2 wide. The 92 was kind of stuck in the middle of a non-existent lane. He was there on the inside of the 21, and he was there on the outside of the 07. The problem was both of those trucks were following trucks in front of them who were 3 wide, so they naturally tended to follow the trucks they were pushing, and the 92 just got phased out. The 07, credit trying to give as much room as he could, but Gary Weaver put 3/4 of that truck below the yellow line, couldn't go any lower for him, and that's just a deal where you're never going to see a situation like that, and if the drivers did that at lap number 11 or 21, and I think that you could come up with a couple of choice words for that decision making, but at lap number 91, nobody's going to tell them not to go for it.
Because you have to if you're that far back. You absolutely have to try and make a move to get to the front of the field. You have no choice. So it forces people to be desperate. And then you end up with situations like that. People just try and go for it, and sometimes they don't all make it out alive, and that's what's happened here. Everybody's just kind of jumped it, though. Towards the middle of the pack there, back of the field. But how about that? I think you look at everybody who's going to be here in top 5 in this race. Jorgensen had been up there all night and just couldn't quite seal the deal. But like you mentioned earlier, Kruska started in the 12th position, and Gary Weaver started 17th, the next to last row on this grid. He's going to come out of this with a P3 finish.
And we said coming to the restart, don't count out Brandon Chaburko's stat sheet's not going to show it. He'll end up laps down in an 8th position. Still not a bad result, but again, he came from 9th on that restart, was on the bumper of the race leader and running in 4th position when he got turned. So again, the door was wide open on that thing. And unfortunately, the track got blocked when that number 99 got turned up the hill, and I think at least everybody inside of the top 7 got some piece of it. The 8 and the 88 were the 2 that would have been able to drag race it out, and by about a half a truck length, it was Kruska in front of Jorgensen when those yellow lights came on. You still got to make it to the end of this race, so we'll come this time at a quarter 4 to collect the white flag one more time around the Talladega Superspeedway, and assuming there are no extracurricular issues for William Kruska, just chatting with him. We'll have another opportunity to do so at Victory Lane if he can complete the next 2.66 miles.
He had a pretty special one, I think, for Kruska as well, to have the PTSD car and to go ahead and win this race as well, get it all done for suicide prevention and lead up to the big event in September, as he noted, and the showdown as well. Certainly is going to hurt when the company car ends up winning the company race, so I know he'll take it. Jorgensen, I think, will accept the strong run. Probably would hope for a little bit more, but certainly won't complain with the second, and Weaver definitely won't be a happy to be here type thing, but I think there's got to be a little bit of a double take when you say, wow, I started all the way at the back and now I'm up here at the top of this thing. So pretty happy all around. And strong runs, David Powers and Jack Price. Didn't really see much of them, especially in the middle of this race after they came down pit road, but somehow they managed to survive and keep the nose clean, and they'll both get top 5 finishes out of it. So I think there may be something to be said about both trying to press and get to the front, but also just making sure that you survive, because these are some pretty solid finishes that you're going to see from some of these guys here towards the back half of the top 5 especially.
Coasting down the back straightaway, Kruska, Jorgensen, Weaver, the top 3 on track at the moment. 7 drivers total scored on the lead lap. About 5 or so total involved in that last accident are not going to be able to limp their way back to the start-finish line. The 99 of Schmieg is going to be able to do so. Andrew Cardinale is going to be able to do so, and so will Jack Price. That may be the extent of the drivers that avoided the accident. I think Kruska, Jorgensen got around it because they were in front of it. Weaver got a good side slap at the passenger side, and I think Price was far enough back that he had enough time to avert to the inside of the racetrack and to be able to get around it. But for William Kruska, coming into tonight's race, started way back at a number 12 spot. We chatted with him as he got an opportunity to restart this race late. Didn't lead it from that point to the moment when the checkers and the yellow came out together, but in front was that 88's nose when it mattered the most, and he'll round out of the trial vote for the final time tonight. Checkered flag and William Kruska, winner in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250 at Talladega.
Big win for him. And then, as we've noted, Jorgensen, Weaver, Powers, and Price, your top 5 in all this deal. And now I guess the only real matter left for these guys is to get back to pit road, park these things, and get our top 3 finishers in here for some interviews, because I know they'll have a lot to say on what took place from just out in front of their windshields.
Well, I can tell you that we've got a lot to say about it, and I can guarantee that the guys behind the wheels have some additional comments as well. So as the 88 heads to victory lane, we'll take this opportunity, step aside one final time tonight from Lincoln, Alabama, and when we come back, we'll catch up with the driver's trackside in your LSRTV post-race show from Talladega. You're watching LSRTV's coverage of the 2017 PTSD Awareness 250, brought to you with the Drive for Suicide Prevention. We'll go to Gatorade Victory Lane with William Kruska when we come back. Welcome back to the Talladega Super Speedway following a spirited finish to tonight's PTSD Awareness 250. Happy to have you back live with us as we get set to go trackside. Talk with your top finishers tonight. Before we do that, we'll take one final look top to bottom at your LSRTV full race results. William Kruska gets the W tonight. Mark Jorgensen Jr. and Gary Weaver come home on the podium. 1, 2, and 3 will be trackside with all of them in just a moment. David Powers, Jack Price, solid finishes for the drivers who pilot the 7 and the 71 respectively. They come home inside of the top 5 tonight. Andrew Cardinal and Nicholas Schmig, final drivers to be able to finish this one on the lead lap. They'll company 6th and 7th in the final standings. Gavin Jones can't lip it home at the end. He comes home 1 lap down in the number 8 position. Cody Eldred is given the number 9 spot. Brandon Chaburko turned, coming to 3 laps to go, rounds out our top 10.
Lloyd Smith, a busy man tonight, and was part of that last wreck, as well as when most of these drivers finishes officially in 11th. Cole Palmer brings it home in the 12th position, got caught up in that one, as did Rodney Wofford in the 13th spot when it was all said and done. And then the rest of these drivers ended up in accidents earlier in the night. Chris Passini went up in the air on the back straightaway, finishes 14th at the end of the evening. Brock Drury was part of that mess on the back straightaway, as well as was Joey Lamb. They finished 15th and 16th. And then Blake Hyther and Hayden Harville, 17th, 18th, 19th, and final place on the grid tonight, when it is all said and done, goes to the 13 of Mark Vega.
That's a look top to bottom at your LSRTV full race results. We can now go trackside with William Kruska, driver of the number 88 machine, who is your winner tonight in our PTSD Awareness 250. Congratulations, sir, on that win. There was a lot going on behind you in that rearview mirror, not only at 3 laps to go and half the field ended up upside down, but on that final restart, I don't know what it was. We had seen good racing, to be fair, up until that point. But everybody seemed to just lose their minds on that last one. We had 3 and 4 wide right off for the restart. The good news for you was your restarting position put you well in front of most of it, but what was it like surviving that?
Yeah, that was crazy. I really don't know how I got away with that win. That was crazy. I thought I was going to get caught up in that.
This whole race, start to finish, 94 laps in distance. Talk us through what you're thinking at lap number 51. We go through a second green flag service. We're clean and green to that point. We had a couple of incidents, but nothing brought out a caution flag. Where are you in the 88 machine at that point, and what are you thinking? And then that caution comes out and kind of really changed everything.
We were back there in 9th, so I was kind of hoping a caution or something would happen, because there was no way once we got out of the pits that we were going to catch up to those strong guys that were running. They definitely were up there for the first part of it. There's no beating them.
You get that caution, you get an opportunity to go up against those guys. Those 4 really seemed like they had it figured out. And a point that we noted in our pre-race show is that with these special events, you tend to get drivers who may not race with each other all the time, and those 4 are with each other every single Friday night. In fact, on this time slot here with us on LSR TV. So, you're one of the names that we see often with this series, and you've got the Drive for Suicide Prevention colors on that number 88 Toyota. So, were you talking with some of the other guys out there at all, trying to get a group together to fight them, or was it just kind of? Did it feel maybe helpless to an extent? Because up until the point where they started dropping there late in this race, it looked like they kind of had you guys.
Yeah, I was by myself. I was a lone wolf, I guess you could say, for pretty much the whole race.
Well, it works out in the end. Talladega is always a fun race, and the end there on that restart was pretty wild. And while I recognize that I think it might have been a little bit unrealistic for me to expect that to go on for another 3 laps, I sure would have loved if it did. It was thrilling stuff, and I know it must have been fun for you. To get the win, though, in a race like this, I know that these one-off events are a little bit different than league racing, and it's always fun having you guys with us here on iRacing Live for the special events tonight, the PTSD Awareness 250. What's it like for you to get a win in a special race like this, and then obviously running the colors you had on tonight?
If there was one paid scheme that I want to win, especially in these kind of events, it definitely was this one. This one definitely means a lot to me. It's really personal. I got to thank my company, you guys, my sponsors for pretty much being there for me too. Pulse Autosport, ASN Network. But definitely this truck, this is pretty much my goal, is to win like that, and that was awesome.
Well, it stood out up at the front of the field, and it was a fantastic drive with you late. They were wrecking behind. You had a little bit of a drag race on your hands, you side by side there with Mark up on the outside of the racetrack. But you end up at a victory lane. You're the winner in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250. I know you gave a lot of shout-outs. Anybody else you want to say hi to?
Pretty much like I mentioned. I mean, not really a lot of highs. I had my friends out there, watching, finally put in victory lane. All that, bad luck happening to me finally pays off. And, like the sponsors like you guys for broadcasting this again. It's awesome.
Well, it's always fun, like I said, having you guys on here. It's always fun seeing, and I think it's a point we made late in this race too. People love Talladega when the bad luck happens to somebody else, and they hate it when it happens to you. So for your sake, it was on the other end of the coin tonight, so you get the win tonight. So congratulations on that one, and hopefully we'll see you guys back here again soon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So that is your race winner tonight from the Talladega Superspeedway. William Kruska piloting that number 88 machine with the Drive for Suicide Prevention colors on board. The big driving force, I might add, behind making tonight's PTSD Awareness 250 possible. So a big shout out to him and everybody else who got this thing happening. Mark Jorgensen Jr. is a name that we are very familiar with, and also excited to talk with Gary Weaver, who comes home in third position tonight. Both of those drivers are trackside with James Pike first. He's with the driver of that number 8 machine.
Right here alongside that 8 truck, the Budweiser machine that was so dominant for a good chunk of this evening and just comes up a little bit short. Mark Jorgensen Jr. here with us now on LSRTV. And Mark, I think it looked like you and Brandon and Chris and Rodney had a bit of a strategy going from the get-go on this race. So just give us a little insight into what the 4 of you were thinking once the green flag dropped and how you were going to try and make this play out.
Man, we listening to a little bit of this broadcast. I got it paused right now. I think Evan said that got the 4 super speedway ringers in there. So obviously, we was all in the same team speak, working well. We qualified the top 4 positions. So basically, we knew that we just kind of had to race hard, race smart, get to that first pit stop. And I'm telling you, man, when a super speedway race has green flag pit stops, that's where you see a lot of the guys shine. And me, Rodney, Brandon, and Chris, we got in and out real clean, got linked up, and we just started trucking away, putting the laps down. And man, it would have been nice if the thing would have went green. I think at one point we had like a 20-second lead on the second pack behind us. And I was telling the guys, I was like, man, let's just be smart. When the pushing truck gets hot, let him and the leader swap. That way the leader can get in behind that guy that was pushing and, just keep the speed up. And I was telling the guys, I was like, man, would it be pretty dang cool if this went green and we just lapped the whole field? Man, we just raced smart, man. I know they're at the early going. I think the first 10 laps, I think that was pretty aggressive racing. But, we do this stuff, Friday night in the Super Speedway Cup Series. And, we've been racing together for a while. So, we knew what each driver was capable of. But pretty cool race, man. It would have been nice to sweep the top 4 spots. Would have been really cool to get the win. But, just didn't work out.
And how tricky was it, especially as this race wound down and the other 3 drivers that you run with on Friday nights regularly got caught up in incidents? How did you manage to sort of adjust your strategy on the fly to compensate for the loss of your, I guess, friends, teammates, competitors, whatever you'd like to call them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, whenever, it was terrible whenever Rodney and Chris got junked out. So, after that, me and Brandon, we was pretty committed to each other. We were just, hey, as long as one of us wins, it doesn't matter who. We just want to come over here and show these guys, hey, we know how to get it done at Talladega, Daytona. It doesn't matter what chassis, trucks, B car, A car, it don't matter. But, yeah, whenever I saw Brandon, get turned, I kind of felt like at that point I was probably a sitting duck. But I'm actually pretty decent at blocking, and I knew that's what I was going to have to do was block any lane that was coming. And Kruska, he almost broke my ankles. I mean, I was kind of a little bit late to the block there coming through the tri-oval, and I saw in my mirror that his truck was on the apron. So, I mean, I think y'all could see that, I think I ran the second lane going through the trioval just to give him the bottom lane. That way he can come back on track. Didn't want to win no race by taking anyone out. Kind of felt bad that I mistimed that block on him, but, he was able to keep it straight. We was able to battle on, but, yeah, just any run that was coming from behind, I was just trying to do whatever I could to block, and I think I ended up making a raw move, and I think I might have ended up blocking the wrong lane, but, to come out P2 is pretty cool.
I was about to ask you about that. It's not quite the finish that you wanted, but what do you take away from this race, finishing runner-up, and I'd say being on average one of the strongest, if not the strongest truck out here all night?
I don't know what you could take away from this. I mean, for the most part, these plate tracks are just a toss-up, and luckily what I had on my side was three really, really strong, good teammates. Rodney Wofford, Brandon Chaburko, and Chris Bassini. Like I said, we raced together on Friday night. Been doing that for years, and we just know how to get it done. But you definitely need some help at this style of racing, and it just wasn't meant to be. Like I say, some guys started getting in wrecks, and all them guys ended up getting swept up. So I was kind of the lone duck, but I still felt pretty good about my chances. But to come out of here, top 3 spot, to be able to talk to y'all on the broadcast, the interview and all that, it's pretty cool. Any time that I join a race and I hear that LSRTV is the broadcast, I mean, I got it already in my mind. Hey, I want to finish top 3. I want to be able to talk to them guys in the booth. I think y'all are top-notch people. Y'all are absolutely amazing. I mean, I love every single one of y'all at LSRTV.
I know there are a lot of people that you need to thank besides us, though. We're only a small cog in this wheel. I know there are a lot bigger pieces that make it happen for you in this 8 truck. So go ahead and let us know who you need to thank and who deserves some credit.
Up foremost, just Kruska, for putting this on. Pretty cool. Got the PTSD awareness. Tremendous cause. Thinking about all them guys. Veterans, disabled vets, whatnot that suffer from that, and appreciate for him putting this race together. Appreciate him for allowing me to be a part of it. I do believe that's the first time me and him has raced on track together, and I think he done an amazing job. I mean, that whenever you're coming down to these last few laps in these style of races, and you got a lot of heavy hitters, guys that run plate tracks all the time in other leagues and this, that, and the other, and I think he had made a comment that his heart was pounding. I mean, I've been in that position numerous times. On Friday nights, it's just an amazing feeling. So really appreciate him for putting this on for the great cause. Obviously, all of my teammates tonight: Brandon Chaburko, Rodney Wofford, Chris Bassini. Just tough luck to them. Like I said, it would have been cool to come out here and just sweep the top 4 spots. As always, LSRTV for the broadcast. I mean, I say it every chance I get, man. Y'all are top-notch people, the best of the best. Cisco behind the scenes doing what he does best, man, with the view, the footage, the camera angles, everything. I mean, y'all work absolutely good together, and I'm glad to be just a little small piece of y'all and y'all's broadcast. But other than that, appreciate Budweiser coming on board tonight. Sponsor me for the race. Man, it would have been nice celebrating in Victory Lane, drinking some Budweisers, but P2 ain't too bad, man. We'll just, I think we got a Super Speedway Cup Series with Raw Flag starting up next Friday night. So, anybody that's still watching the broadcast and listening to these interviews, be sure to tune in on a Friday night, man. We put on one heck of a show over there. Can't wait.
Shoot, if you can go ahead and name everybody here working at LSRTV, we might as well go ahead and throw you up in the booth sometime, Mark. But thanks for the time tonight. Congrats on the finish, and we'll see you here not too long on a Friday night.
All right, thanks, James. Appreciate it.
So, your second place finisher there, Mark Jorgensen Jr., and now we slide to third, Gary Weaver in this 07 truck, who managed to come through and get a podium finish out of everything. Gary, I think we start with talking about your evening by talking about this back-to-front run. You qualified 17th, end up third on the night. Was that intentional to try and start at the back and just avoid everything, or did you just end up with a bad qualifying lap by your standards and you just had to race your way up to the front from the get-go?
Well, first of all, I was planning to start about, with a decent qualifying lap, but of course I started near the back, so I just decided to hang back with the 25, and that actually worked out pretty well. So running up to the front, I didn't think I was going to be able to pull out a top 3, maybe a top 5, but I somehow managed to save that. I have no idea how, but I did.
Yeah, that's my big question. How on earth did you make it through all of the wrecks at the end? Because it seemed like you were near a lot of them and you got pieces of damage in a few of them, but you never really tore that 07 up and never really had to use the quick fix. I know you used a bit of it, but you kept that 07 cleaner than just about everybody else out there all night. So how'd you do it?
I honestly have no idea, but the one thing that really kind of sent me down was, I think it was that first or second caution where involved the 94 and the 25 at nowhere to go, completely destroyed the front engine, used my quick fix then. And through then, I decided to see what happens. Right then, I was a lap down. Next caution, got the lucky dog. Decided to ride around, lost the draft. Caution comes out again. And next thing you know, the top 3, final caution.
Kind of snuck up there. And how proud are you when you take a look and you step back and you see this race in full and you managed to pull that off? What can you take away from this, and what can you bring with you into future races here on the sim?
Well, future races, I can definitely expect to actually save a truck next time 4 wide happens, because I was not expecting to save that. Once I got turned sideways, the one thing just got in my mind right then was keep it straight and I'm good. And man, I still don't believe that I got 3rd place. It's still trying to sink in.
Pretty crazy stuff here at Talladega happens, but you end up with a very strong finish tonight. And figure at this point we give you a chance to send your shout outs, your thank yous, your congratulations, your love. Who do you need to thank for making the 07 operation possible?
Well, I need to thank Will for putting this on, first of all. I know I've been doing these ever since, I'm pretty sure, ever since the first event that he's been scheduling. And it's definitely been fun racing in these, because it gives you a chance to either know people or just have fun, one of the two, even both. But that's pretty much it. Although I do like to thank the 25 Hayden Harville for riding with me. We planned that out about 2 weeks before then, and then sadly he got taken out. But it was fun while it lasted, though.
Well, thank you for the time tonight, Gary. Congratulations on the finish, and hopefully we'll see you here in an event not too long in the future.
Yep, thanks for broadcasting, by the way.
Anytime. That's what we're here for. So there's Gary Weaver in the 07 machine for you, your top 3. And I think before we close out tonight, I know we've heard people talk about it in bits and pieces, but I think it's worth coming back to one more time that this is, at the end of the day, all about PTSD and suicide prevention awareness. I think only soldiers really know the horrors of war and of conflict and how crazy it can get, and the things that they've seen are things that few of us civilians ever will. So I'd say if you get the chance, take a moment, thank a veteran, thank an active military member for everything that they've given for this country or whatever country you might be watching in. And if they need help, a reminder that the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-TALK. Which comes out to 1-800-273-8255. A reminder that you're never really alone, and the easiest way to kind of calm yourself and get some help, just talk to somebody and let them know, because there are more people than I think we realize on our own that are willing to help you if you go out there and you say something and you let people know.
And this is not the first time that these guys have been with us at LSRTV, and I can promise you that this is not going to be the last time. So if you're looking to get involved, and get on air here on LSRTV and get on a broadcasted race, I can't think of any better opportunity and any better group and a cause to get behind than all of these guys. So again, this week, putting the spotlight on PTSD awareness with the guys at the Drive for Suicide Prevention. do a lot of good. If you want to donate to the people that they're trying to help out, if you want to donate to them, if you want to get involved with them, you can find all of the information on their Twitter. The Twitter is at Drive4SP. That's the letter 4, or the number 4, I guess. It's getting late. Drive4SP. There's a link to their website there, and as well, all the information for their special events, which you can find right here on LSR TV, but as well, some of the league stuff that they do if you want to get involved in something on a week-by-week basis. Until that next time arrives, that wraps things up for us here tonight and this morning from the Talladega Superspeedway. As always, thanks so much for joining us tonight on LSR TV and iRacing Live. If you want a full look at our upcoming broadcast schedule, you can find that by going to our website. That's www.livesimracing.com. You can also stay up to date with us on the socials. Follow us on Twitter at LSR TV. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/LSR TV official. We've got Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series action, and we've got Super Speedway Cup Series coming to you in the next 7 days. And again, you can make sure you never miss a broadcast by making sure you've got iRacing.com/live bookmarked, or just subscribe to us here on YouTube. Quick way to get to that is youtube.com/C/LSR TV. So until next time, on behalf of the entire team at LSR TV and Live Sim Racing LLC, for the folks behind the scenes, DJ Lion, everybody else who makes these broadcasts possible week in and week out, and for the crew tonight, for Cisco Scaramuza, for myself, Evan Pasoko, and for James Pike, want to congratulate William Kruska on his checkered flag and win in tonight's PTSD Awareness 250. We hope to see you next time right here with us at LSR TV, the voice of sim racing. Until then, good night.